Chapter 862. Duanmu Qianshan's sudden words made Bu Tiannan's face darken. Bu Tiannan really wanted to spare Duanmu Qianshan's life. Bu Tiannan was crazy. But that didn't mean he was an idiot. He knew how powerful Duanmu Qianshan was in the Blue Dragon Society. So if he really killed Duanmu Qianshan, it would definitely cause a lot of people in the Blue Dragon Society to oppose it, even to the point of dissension. However, there was a prerequisite for this. Duanmu Qianshan had to play dead and not provoke him. Bu Tiannan stood up abruptly and stared at Duanmu Qianshan. He said coldly, "Inappropriate? But I think it's appropriate." Duan Tianlang immediately stood up and shouted, "How dare you? Presumptuous! Duanmu Qianshan, how dare you speak to the great dragon head like this?" Seeing that Duanmu Qianshan actually jumped out to cause trouble, Duan Tianlang was even a little excited. In the entire Blue Dragon Society, Duan Tianlang wasn't afraid of anyone. The one he feared the most was the old man, Duanmu Qianshan. Duanmu Qianshan's seniority was too great, and his contributions to the Blue Dragon Society were too great. Even Bu Tiannan was afraid of his prestige. So as long as Duanmu Qianshan was alive, no matter how much Bu Tiannan valued him, the position of the second dragon head would never belong to him. On the contrary, as long as Duanmu Qianshan was dead and Bu Tiannan agreed to let him be the second dragon head, the other dragon heads wouldn't be able to stop him. Duanmu Qianshan didn't bother with Duan Tianlang at all. He just looked at Bu Tiannan and said in a deep voice, "Great dragon head, I know you want to kill me, and I also know that you've disliked this old man for a long time. But before that, do you want to hear a few words from this old man?" The other dragon heads and the branch leaders of the 36 Big Dipper divisions were all silent. They looked at the two above in shock. Previously they had only fallen out, but now they had completely fallen out. Bu Tiannan looked at Duanmu Qianshan and said coldly, "Speak." Duanmu Qianshan sighed and said, "From the previous generation of the Blue Dragon Society, only you and I are left. You should still remember what the previous generation of the Blue Dragon Society was like. At that time, the 7 great dragon heads were ranked according to seniority, and strength was not the most important. The 7 of them were each responsible for a part of things, and they discussed with each other to check and balance each other. However, I felt that this would make the entire Blue Dragon Society's headquarters incredibly overstaffed. Only a single person would be able to maximize the efficiency of the Blue Dragon Society. However, that person isn't me. Although I have enough experience, my strength isn't enough to suppress others. Therefore, I'll let you have the position of Great Dragon Head. Only your strength can suppress the entire Blue Dragon Society." Bu Tiannan said expressionlessly, "So what you're saying is that my position as the Great Dragon Head of the Blue Dragon Society was given to me by you, and now you're going to take it back?" Duanmu Qianshan closed his eyes and said, "No, I don't have the strength to take it back, nor do I have the qualifications to take it back." At this point, Duanmu Qianshan suddenly opened his eyes and said loudly, "I just want to ask you, Great Dragon Head. After all these years, have I ever had the slightest intention of rebelling? Everything I've done is for the sake of the Blue Dragon Society. In the end, Great Dragon Head, you acted recklessly and didn't listen to my advice, causing the Blue Dragon Society to be stained with karma. Don't you know why the Heavenly Sin Branch was destroyed 2 days ago, Great Dragon Head? In the end, you even went to the Temple of Great Light to seek revenge, which caused even deeper karma. Great Dragon Head, I still remember that when you first took over the Blue Dragon Society, although you had a strange personality, you weren't like this at that time." Bu Tiannan said with a gloomy expression, "You ask me why I'm like this, then I'll tell you why. Because I'm the Great Dragon Head of the Blue Dragon Society. Whether the Blue Dragon Society is good or bad, it's my business alone. I'll bear the karma I've sown, I'll solve it. As long as I'm here, I won't let anything happen to the Blue Dragon Society. But I can't tolerate someone speaking louder than me in the Blue Dragon Society." Duanmu Qianshan smiled bitterly. He understood. It should be said that he was wrong from the beginning. Bu Tiannan was an extremely egoistic person, and he always had been. When Bu Tiannan was an assassin, it wasn't that no one told him to use some tactics to carry out his mission more easily and effortlessly. But Bu Tiannan never did it. Because this was someone else's method. When did he, Bu Tiannan, need anyone to teach him how to do things? It was the same now that he was the Great Dragon Head. Whether his actions were good or bad, When did he need Duanmu Qianshan to tell him what to do? Even if what he did was wrong, he had to be wrong to the end. A person who was very persistent in certain areas had the potential to become strong, and Butiannan was such a person. But obviously, for the Blue Dragon Society, this wasn't a good thing. Duanmu Qianshan let out a long sigh. Great Dragon Head, you didn't do anything wrong, but I didn't do anything wrong either. The entire Blue Dragon Society didn't do anything wrong either. It's just that you forgot one thing, and that is, the Blue Dragon Society doesn't belong to you alone, but to everyone in the Blue Dragon Society. Butiannan said indifferently. Are you done? If you are, then find a way to die in a dignified manner. I'll give you a chance to choose. When the crowd heard this, their expressions changed. Everyone knew what Duanmu Qianshan had done for the Blue Dragon Society over the years. Most of the people present were even promoted by Duanmu Qianshan. Duanmu Qianshan didn't promote these people because of their relationships, but because of their strength. If Duanmu Qianshan died, the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't just lose an existence at the True Fire Spirit Refinement Realm, they would also lose their brains. Butiannan valued people like Duan Tianlang. In fact, Duan Tianlang used to be the leader of the Big Dipper 36 divisions. Everyone knew who he was. What right did he have to replace Duanmu Qianshan? Therefore, everyone present spoke up, telling Butiannan to calm down and wait. All of you shut up. A powerful murderous intent suddenly bloomed, causing the entire hall to instantly become silent. However, at this moment, a figure in blood-red clothes calmly walked out from the murderous intent. As he walked, he said indifferently, Butiannan, you are a top-notch assassin and a top-notch warrior, but you are not suitable to be the leader of the Blue Dragon Society. Senior Duanmu is right. The Blue Dragon Society isn't just your Blue Dragon Society. If you can't do this position well, then replace it with someone else. Everyone present turned their eyes to Chu Xiao. Butiannan frowned and said coldly, Who are you? Duanmu Qianshan trained you just to send you to your death? He could clearly feel that the person in front of him was only at the real pellet state, but his whole body gave Butiannan an extremely uncomfortable feeling. There was even a hint of familiarity. Who am I? I'm a debt collector. Butiannan, didn't you say that you will solve and bear the karma you sowed? Then now, let's settle the karma between you and me. As Chu Xiao took off the mask on his face, everyone present took a deep breath. Although more than half a year had passed, as a figure who had stirred up the underworld, who didn't recognize Chu Xiao. However, there were several dragon heads present who were very calm. Obviously, they had already known the news long ago. They were all people who would clearly stand on Duanmu Qianshan's side. Butiannan looked at Chu Xiao in front of him. Even with his mental fortitude, he couldn't help but feel horrified at this time. Chu Xiao, you're not dead. Although resurrection sounded a little incredible, there were still some secret methods in the underworld that could do it. However, even if it could be done, the conditions were very harsh, and some things must be preserved. However, Butiannan saw the power of that battle with his own eyes. He directly unleashed the power of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. Everything was completely destroyed. Jingchan Jizong and Chu Xiao were already dead without any residue left. How did he resurrect? Of course, now was not the time to worry about this. Butiannan turned his gaze to Duanmu Qianshan, and there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Duanmu Qianshan, you actually colluded with outsiders to kill me. Duanmu Qianshan said lightly, Sir Chu Xiao is not an outsider. He was originally from my Blue Dragon Society. But it was precisely because of Big Dragon Head's decision that the headquarters neglected the management of the Big Dipper 36 divisions, allowing a despicable person like Duan Tianlang to bully and curry favor with the superior, forcing Lord Chu Xiao to leave, forcing away the #1 person of the younger generation. Big Dragon Head, you have done too many wrong things. I don't want to kill you, but for the sake of the Blue Dragon Society, I have to kill you. As soon as Duanmu Qianshan's voice fell, the entire Azure Dragon Society's main hall was enveloped in brilliant light. Dragons' roars reverberated in the air as the doors to the main hall were sealed shut, trapping everyone inside. Butiannan looked at Duan Tianlang fiercely. What's going on? Something like the sex protective array must be in the hands of one's confidants. In the past, the key to the sex protective array was held by Duanmu Qianshan, but now it was taken away by Butiannan and given to Duan Tianlang. Duan Tianlang said with a flustered face. I don't know either. The key is in my hands. Without the key, how did they activate the array? Duanmu Qianshan said lightly. How many years have you been in charge of the affairs of the Blue Dragon Society? I have been in charge for my whole life. Who said that the sex protective array can't be activated without the array? Bu Tiannan turned his gaze to the remaining 4 dragon heads. These 4 people were the top killers of the real pellet state. In the Blue Dragon Society, their status was second only to Duanmu Qianshan and Bu Tiannan. Are you all going to betray me too? Among the 4, 3 of them stood firmly beside Duanmu Qianshan. Only one person was at a loss and seemed to have not recovered from this shock. One of them sighed and said, Big Dragon Head, it's not that we want to betray you, but if the Blue Dragon Society continues to develop like this, something big will happen sooner or later. After all, we are also members of the Blue Dragon Society. I really can't bear to see the Blue Dragon Society collapse like this. Bu Tiannan sneered, looked around and said coldly, Inescapable net, ambushes from 10 sides, so many preparations. It seems that you really intend to kill me today? Chu Xiao, you can kill the old monk Jing Chanzhizong. Do you think you can continue to kill me now? As Bu Tiannan's voice fell, the murderous intent around him suddenly erupted, and there was a faint roar of the Azure Dragon. Chapter 863. Just as Bu Tiannan had said to Duan Tianlang, he knew that Duanmu Qianshan would probably stir up some trouble and would not give up without putting up a fight. Although Chu Xiao's appearance was beyond his expectation, Bu Tiannan was not afraid. For Bu Tiannan, his way of dealing with things had always been simple and violent. No matter what kind of conspiracy they were, he would kill them all and be quiet. Dense killing intent condensed like a substance. Bu Tiannan suddenly clawed at Duanmu Qianshan, who was the closest to him. A sonic boom came in the air. The cyan dragon claw was vivid and lifelike. In an instant, it had locked all the places around Duanmu Qianshan to dodge. Although Duanmu Qianshan was old, he still had the strength to fight. A gilded dragon staff appeared in his hand and he smashed it at Bu Tiannan's claw. With a loud bang, an extreme wave broke out, causing the surrounding people to dodge in a hurry. Chu Xiao also did not expect that Duanmu Qianshan, an old man who looked gentle and refined, would have such a firm and fierce martial path. Especially those who chose to use a staff as a weapon, their martial arts were big and fierce. It seemed that when Duanmu Qianshan was young, he was also very violent. After just one move, Duanmu Qianshan was directly blown away by Bu Tiannan. His hand holding the gilded dragon staff began to tremble slightly. Duanmu Qianshan smiled bitterly. He was old and had not fought for many years. His current strength was not even half of his peak. In other words, even when he was at his peak, he was no match for Bu Tiannan. This was also the reason why he gave the position of Chief Dragon to Bu Tiannan, even though he had more experience and prestige than Bu Tiannan. It was because he believed that Bu Tiannan's strength could bring enough benefits to the Azure Dragon Society. Unexpectedly, he did not see any benefits, but trouble kept coming. As Bu Tiannan made his move, Chu Xiao also took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Bu Tiannan and punched him. His momentum was like a raging river and the rising fist intent pressed forward. Mountain and sea fist scripture. Bu Tiannan turned around and also punched. The killing intent was so strong that it almost overflowed. It was like a sharp blade, tearing everything apart. The two fists collided, and the power of both exploded. The entire hall was filled with the brilliance of the array. Obviously, the power of these two people had threatened the array in the hall of the Blue Dragon Society. Originally, Bu Tiannan thought that no matter how strong Chu Xiao was, he was only at the real pellet state, and fighting head-on was purely courting death. However, who would have thought that this punch would cause both sides to take several steps back? In terms of pure strength, the two sides were actually evenly matched. Looking at the thin layer of golden and silver flames around Chu Xiao's body, Bu Tiannan narrowed his eyes and said, "Refining your body with true fire? You took the same path as Chen Qingdi." After the end of the 6 illusory realms, apart from the matter of Chu Xiao and Jing Chanzhizong perishing together, Emperor Chen Qing also shocked the pugilistic world. Of course, after that, some people also tried to use internal power and true fire to refine their bodies, but they found that it was useless. Of course, after that, there were also people who tried to temper their bodies with inner force and true fire. However, they found that it was useless. Of course, after that, some people tried to refine their bodies with internal power and true fire, but they finally found that it was useless. Refining one's body with true fire was different from refining one's spirit. The latter only required one to accumulate one's comprehension of heaven and earth, and could be completed in a short period of time. The former, on the other hand, required a long period of time to use the true fire to temper the body, all the way until every strand of flesh and every meridian in the body was like a divine weapon. This kind of pain needed to be endured for more than 10 years or even decades. It was not something that ordinary people could endure at all. Besides, even if you could endure it, could you accurately control the true fire to refine every strand of flesh and blood in your body in this kind of pain? Once something went wrong, you would be hurt. And even if you could do both, in a few decades, people with good perception would have already stepped into the realm of true fire and spirit refinement. Why bother to take such a difficult path? So in the current Jianghu, only Chen Qingdi was taking this path. Only Chu Xiu took advantage of the opportunity of reconstructing his body to complete the journey that others would take decades to complete in a short period of time. Bu Tiannan was surprised that Chu Xiu could reach this step, but then he sneered and said, "So what if you have refined your body with true fire? If Chen Qingdi came in person, I might be afraid. But even if you have refined your body with true fire, you are not Chen Qingdi." Behind Bu Tiannan, a cyan light was flowing, and a powerful and majestic aura was like that of a fierce beast. A lifelike azure dragon Dharma power hovered behind him, as if the azure dragon, an ancient divine beast, had descended. The azure dragon materialization did not directly attack Chu Xiu and Duanmu Qian Shan. Instead, it attached itself to Bu Tiannan's body. In an instant, Bu Tiannan's aura became extremely fierce. The cyan azure dragon Gang Qi condensed around his body, vaguely looking like a dragon's claws and tail. Even his eyes turned golden, like the pupils of a snake. Chu Xiu had seen this kind of change in Yi Tianxia, the guy who refined the inner elixir of the blood dragon. What was going on with Bu Tiannan? Duanmu Qian Shan came over and whispered, "Be careful. Bu Tiannan once obtained a drop of ancient azure dragon blood. Of course, no one can be sure whether it was the blood of the azure dragon or the blood of a powerful flood dragon. But this thing did cause some changes in his cultivation method with the Blue Dragon Society. Once he enters this state of dragon transformation, not only does his strength skyrocket, but his personality also becomes extremely crazy, bloodthirsty, and belligerent. I even suspect that this change in his personality has something to do with the blood of the azure dragon." As Duanmu Qian Shan's voice fell, Bu Tiannan had already rushed toward Chu Xiu and Duanmu Qian Shan. With a casual grab, the cyan Gang Qi condensed into a lifelike green dragon crescent moon blade. The blade was the color of blood condensed from murderous intent. It had to be said that in this state, Bu Tiannan's control of his power was almost condensed to the extreme. The ability to condense qi into something was generally possible for any warrior who could externalize Gang Qi. The only difference was how much you could do it. For example, if it was the same sword qi, the sword qi released by a warrior who had just reached the level of externalizing Gang Qi was not called sword qi at all. It could only be called a force. The stronger one's strength was, the more realistic and powerful the Gang Qi that could be condensed would be. On the green dragon crescent moon blade condensed by Bu Tiannan, the Gang Qi had even condensed to an unimaginable level. When the blade fell, the space in front of him seemed to be torn apart by him. The heavenly law war case appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. With a shake of his hand, the heavenly law war case turned into a huge saber. The unique saber technique of the Black Tortoise True Technique was displayed. The power of the saber was unstoppable. However, when fighting with Bu Tiannan, Chu Xiu was forced to retreat step by step. This was a complete suppression of power, and no saber technique could make up for it. Especially now that Bu Tiannan had entered this state of dragon transformation. Although he had fallen into a certain degree of madness, and even the saber technique he used could not be called a saber technique, each of his moves had reached the limit of his own combat strength. He had exerted his strength to the extreme and accurately chopped at the weakest part of each of Chu Xiu's saber techniques. Bu Tiannan could be said to be the strongest existence that Chu Xiu had encountered so far. The strength of the top 10 on the list was not just for show, but for killing. Although the old monk Jingchan Jizong was also very strong, he could not compare with Bu Tiannan. The difference in power between the two was like heaven and earth. Duanmu Qian Shan took advantage of the time when Bu Tiannan was madly attacking Chu Xiu. The golden coiling dragon staff in his hand blossomed with an extremely dazzling radiance. It was as if the sun was falling down with a loud bang. Duanmu Qianshan had stimulated his current strength to the peak of this strike, which was not much different from when he was young. However, Bu Tiannan's figure moved. The divine dragon tail whip, and the cyan dragon tail made of Gang Qi instantly grew to more than 10 meters. It directly whipped Duanmu Qianshan and his staff away. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Chu Xiu slashed out with a sea-cleaving blade in his hand. The blade momentum was like a raging wave, tearing everything in front of it apart. The powerful blade momentum even seemed to have completely divided the hall, causing the other disciples of the Blue Dragon Society to immediately dodge to the side. The power of the sea-cleaving blade seemed to have exerted Chu Xiu's current strength to the extreme. As the blade slashed down, Bu Tiannan's figure was blasted back a few steps. His crescent blade, which was completely condensed from Azure Dragon Gang Qi, also showed traces of cracks. However, after this slash, Chu Xiu's hands that were holding the blade also trembled slightly. On the heavenly blade formed by the heavenly war case, some of the mechanisms were even a little shaken by the power of the recoil, making a metallic screech. Chu Xiu sighed. He finally understood what Mo Yezi meant when he said that the heavenly war case was flawed. No matter what kind of weapon it was or what kind of strange power it had, the most important thing about a weapon was that it had to be sturdy and sharp. It could withstand great power and cause enough damage. The heavenly war case was currently changing, but its power was insufficient. It was still at a disadvantage in this kind of head-on collision. However, Duanmu Qianshan's all-out attack had finally created an opportunity for him. Chu Xiu would not give up so easily. The heavenly war case in his hand transformed into a long spear. Ask the Heavens tyrannical spear. When the Ask the Heavens spear art was used, the spear momentum was like a forest, and its power was indomitable. It was even stronger than the Lu family's ancestor. In the blink of an eye, the Ask the Heavens tyrannical spear turned into the Great Change Halberd. The Black Tortoise True Technique's Great Change Halberd manual was used. Although it was a different concept from Lu Fengxian's unparalleled Demon God Halberd, it was still a martial Dao that was open and open. After several consecutive changes of martial Dao, as long as Bu Tiannan adapted to this martial Dao and found its weakness, Chu Xiu would immediately change his martial Dao. This was the true use of the Black Tortoise True Technique. It would make the enemy never be able to find out where the boundaries of your martial Dao were. Chapter 864. Seeing Duanmu Qianshan and Chu Xiu joining hands to suppress Bu Tiannan, many warriors of the Blue Dragon Society present had different expressions, but most of them were happy to see Bu Tiannan die. As Duanmu Qianshan said before, most of the people in the Blue Dragon Society were promoted by him and were his confidants. Even if some of them were not, they were not blind. They knew who was doing things that were beneficial to the Blue Dragon Society, and they also knew who was destroying the foundation of the Blue Dragon Society. However, Duan Tianlang was extremely nervous at this time. Bu Tiannan's defeat was equivalent to his own death. However, at this time the situation on the field suddenly changed. Bu Tiannan was suppressed to the extreme by Chu Xiu's Black Tortoise True Technique. His eyes suddenly burst out a bloody light. His dragon body was stained with blood, and the surrounding energy instantly erupted several times. The green dragon crescent blade slashed horizontally, and the violent power drowned everything. No matter what martial arts technique Chu Xiu used, it was completely submerged by the violent power in the sky. The natural law war case in Chu Xiu's hand once again transformed into the peerless heavenly blade. As the blade slashed down, the red dust slash was displayed. The space was like a scroll, and everything was torn apart by Chu Xiu's red dust slash. However, after the scroll was torn, an even more violent blade light rushed toward Bu Tiannan. Only God knew how powerful Bu Tiannan was now. It seemed to be endless. On the other side, Duanmu Qianshan also wanted to help Bu Tiannan, but after all, he was already old and could not exert his full strength for a long time. Almost as soon as he got close to Bu Tiannan, he was blasted away. Chu Xiu desperately resisted, but at this time, Lu Jiang he suddenly said, "Boy, there is something wrong with this guy. Look at his hand. Try to get close to him with the blood shadow technique and see where he came from." Previously, Chu Xiu's attention was focused on resisting Bu Tiannan's attack, so he did not pay attention to anything else. Only after hearing Lu Jianghe's words did he notice the other party's hand. It was impossible to say that Bu Tiannan was not affected at all by Chu Xiu's mortal world ethereal cut. At this moment, the web between his thumb and forefinger had already been torn, but what seeped out wasn't scarlet blood, but greenish-gold blood. This was a little strange. Chu Xiu had never seen anyone cultivate a cultivation technique that could change the color of their blood. Chu Xiu unleashed the mountainous sea fist scripture. Amidst the endless storm of saber lights, even with the toughness of Chu Xiu's fleshly body, his arms were still sliced until they were drenched in blood. However, with the undying demon pill, those injuries could be healed almost instantly. Of course, this immortality was limited. Previously, on the battlefield between the Lu family and the Sun family, because there was an innumerable amount of blood and qi as nourishment to repair Chu Xiu's body, he was almost immortal at that time. But now, there was no such condition. In order to maintain his immortality, Chu Xiu had to consume his own strength. If he was injured too much, he would not be able to withstand it. Just as Chu Xiu approached Bu Tiannan, Chu Xiu displayed the blood shadow technique. In an instant, countless blood shadows bloomed. Although most of them were completely smashed into blood mist by Bu Tiannan's casual attack, there were still a few blood shadows that approached Bu Tiannan. In an instant, Chu Xiu displayed the blood god demonic technique and absorbed a drop of Bu Tiannan's blood. The blood god demonic technique had reached the pinnacle of control over one's own blood and qi, and it was the same for anyone's blood and qi. After absorbing a drop of blood, Chu Xiu understood what was going on with Bu Tiannan. No wonder everyone in Jianghu called him a madman. No wonder Su Yun did not kill Bu Tiannan when he went to the Great Light Temple last time. Even though Bu Tiannan was much stronger than Su Yun, the fundamental reason was that they were afraid of driving Bu Tiannan crazy and creating a real evil monster. On the path of martial arts, there were many who relied on external items. Even the elixirs and other things that everyone used for their daily cultivation were considered external items. However, everyone was extremely cautious when it came to these powers that were not cultivated by themselves. Like Yi Tianxia, who swallowed and refined the inner core of the blood dragon to cultivate the demonic beast cultivation method, this was already considered extremely bold. But Bu Tiannan was different. What he did could not be considered bold, but simply crazy. In the past, he did not refine that drop of azure dragon blood. Instead, he fused with it, traced it back to its source, and let that drop of azure dragon blood assimilate himself. Simply put, Bu Tiannan actually wanted to use that drop of azure dragon blood to transform himself into a real azure dragon body. This kind of thing, not to mention actually doing it, even thinking about it felt like a fantasy. But Bu Tiannan did it. Although he did not succeed, he did not fail. Now, part of his blood, even his meridians and bones, had even been transformed into the appearance of a ferocious beast. The power of a ferocious beast came from its own world, and its strength was definitely far greater than that of a human warrior. This kind of assimilation had already been ingrained in Bu Tiannan's bones. Although it would not appear in normal times, if he used all his strength like now, the ferocity and madness of the ferocious beast would completely take over him. At that time, Bu Tiannan would really become a monster, an uncontrollable monster. Chu Xiu believed that Bu Tiannan should also know all this, but he still chose to cultivate like this. This guy was really a madman who would go all the way to the end. At this time, Lu Jiang he could not help but say, "Boy, if you can't do it, just retreat for the time being. It is really tricky to meet such a madman. This guy does not even care about his own life. How can you fight with him?" "Why can't I fight? If he dares to risk his life, so do I." As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, he did not retreat, but instead moved forward. He displayed the black tortoise divine palm of the black tortoise true technique. The powerful force was like a mountain, blocking Bu Tiannan's attack. Although it could not completely block it, with the eternal demon pill, if he could not block it, he could resist it. At the same time, a large amount of blood mist burst out from Chu Xiu's body, wrapping around Bu Tiannan. This blood mist was not used to attack. Even if Bu Tiannan casually tore a large piece of it, this blood mist was still constantly pulling the power of Bu Tiannan's blood. The control of the demonic blood method on the power of Bu Tiannan's blood was extremely subtle. Chu Xiu was using his own blood to pull the power of Bu Tiannan's blood. At present, the power of Bu Tiannan's blood had been divided into two parts. One belonged to him, and the other belonged to the blood of the Azure Dragon. Although the two sides had merged a little, in fact, they had not completely merged. In fact, Even Bu Tiannan himself did not know whether these two kinds of blood could completely merge. Therefore, under the pull of the demonic blood method, Bu Tiannan suddenly let out a muffled groan. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, and his attacks became more violent. At this time, Chu Xiu did not care, as if he really wanted to fight Bu Tiannan to the end. The blood mist had become so thick that it condensed into a huge blood cocoon. Every time it pulsed, Bu Tiannan's blood was pulled out. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was as pale as a piece of paper. The eternal demon pill could not withstand such a long period of consumption, and at the same time, the demonic blood method also extracted the power of his blood. Right now, he was completely fighting with Bu Tiannan to see who would be the first to give up. At this moment, Duanmu Qianshan's figure appeared behind Bu Tiannan. All the power in his body flowed into the gilded coiling dragon staff. The staff smashed down with the force of a mountain, and the entire surface of the gilded coiling dragon staff cracked. With a loud bang, the gang energy defense around Bu Tiannan was smashed. Bu Tiannan himself, along with the already cracked gilded coiling dragon staff, were directly sent flying. Duanmu Qianshan's concentrated attack finally caused a chain reaction. A stream of blood flowed from the corner of Bu Tiannan's mouth. It was no longer green-gold blood, but bright red. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the huge blood cocoon suddenly exploded, and a large amount of blood gushed out of Bu Tiannan's body. At the same time, the cyan gang qi around him quickly dissipated, the azure dragon dharma form also gradually collapsed, and even his eyes gradually returned to normal. The heavenly law war case in Chu Xiu's hand instantly transformed into the heavenly-seeking tyrannical spear, and directly pierced towards Bu Tiannan. With a loud bang, the spear pierced through his chest and nailed him to the stone wall. However, at the same time that Chu Xiu made his move, Bu Tiannan's right hand condensed the last trace of power, turned it into a dragon claw, and directly pierced through Chu Xiu's chest. Seeing this scene, Mu Zi suddenly cried out in surprise. Regardless of anything else, she was about to rush forward, but she was firmly held back by Han Lei and Song Xiao. Although the fight between the two of them seemed to have ended, the slightest fluctuation could cost their lives. Miss, calm down. Official Chu will not die so easily. Don't forget that Official Chu's body was destroyed, but he is still alive. Sure enough, Chu Xiu, whose face was as pale as a piece of paper, pulled Bu Tiannan's hand out of his chest. Although a large amount of blood was spurting out and Chu Xiu couldn't even stand steadily, there was a force protecting his heart meridian, allowing his body to slowly heal. Bu Tiannan did not have the invincible demon pill, so he would definitely die. However, perhaps because of the demonic beast's blood, Bu Tiannan's vitality was unusually strong. Even though his heart meridian was pierced by Chu Xiu's spear, he still did not die completely. Looking at Chu Xiu, Bu Tiannan suddenly laughed. Every time he laughed, a large amount of blood gushed out of his mouth. Chu Xiu, although you killed me, you did not win. Bu Tiannan was right. Chu Xiu did kill Bu Tiannan, but if Duanmu Qianshan did not give Chu Xiu a chance at the last moment, the result of the battle would still be unknown. In a real battle of life and death, Chu Xiu indeed could not win against Bu Tiannan. But I don't need to win, I only need to kill you, even if I have to do it by hook or by crook. Although Bu Tiannan was on the verge of death, his expression and tone did not show any fear of death, nor did he show any hatred or anger towards Chu Xiu. Regardless of whether I win or lose, I only see defeat. Ha ha ha. Chu Xiu, you are shameless enough. You are more suitable for this Jianghu than I am. The Blue Dragon Society may be better in your hands than in mine, but it may also be more miserable. But I did not lose, and I did not do anything wrong. After saying the last sentence, a drop of greenish-golden blood completely exploded in Bu Tiannan's body, and at the same time, his vitality was taken away. Chapter 865. Bu Tiannan was the only one among all the people that Chu Xiu had killed who he didn't hate, but he had to kill. The one that Chu Xiu really wanted to kill was actually Duan Tianlang, the villain who had schemed against him. However, just because of Duan Tianlang, Chu Xiu wanted to fight with Bu Tiannan to the death, which was actually very funny. Just as Bu Tiannan said before he died, he didn't lose, and he didn't do anything wrong. He was an extremely stubborn person. Even before he died, he didn't think that he had done anything wrong. In Bu Tiannan's mind, there was no detour, no room for euphemism. There was only one way to go, and that was to go all the way to death. He accepted the task to kill people, so anyone who stood in his way must die. He became the head of the great dragon. No matter whether his decision was right or wrong, he would not allow anyone to refute or interfere, even if that person's decision was actually right. Duan Tianlang had become his subordinate. Even though he knew that Duan Tianlang was a bully and wasn't a good person, he would never allow Chu Xiu to kill him since he was his subordinate. It was difficult to judge a person based on right or wrong, success or failure. It could only be said that Bu Tiannan was really stubborn to the extreme. Even if he didn't die in the hands of Chu Xiu with his character, once he provoked the most powerful person in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, he would definitely be killed. Bu Tiannan was right about one thing. Chu Xiu was more shameless than him, and he was more suitable for this Jianghu. Most of the time to survive in this Jianghu, it was not only about who was stronger, but also about who was more shameless. At this moment, Duan Tianlang, who was standing on the side, was already sweating, and his eyes were full of fear. Bu Tiannan was dead. Bu Tiannan, who was ranked in the top 10 on the list, was killed by Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu was alive, he had nightmares almost every day, fearing that Chu Xiu would kill him. It wasn't until Chu Xiu's death that he finally had a few days of peace. He didn't have to worry about being killed all the time. But when Chu Xiu revealed his identity just now, he still couldn't believe that Chu Xiu was still alive. How could he still be alive? Regardless of whether Duan Tianlang believed it or not, Chu Xiu had appeared in front of him. Moreover, Duan Tianlang knew that as Bu Tiannan's confidant, he knew exactly what he had been doing recently. Bullying the weak and sucking up to the strong could even be considered a good thing. He had been wantonly eliminating dissidents in the Blue Dragon Society and fighting for power. He had offended more than just one or two people. Without Bu Tiannan's protection, even without Chu Xiu's help, he would still be dead. At this moment, the outer array formation seemed to loosen a little, and the door opened once again. In an instant, a blood mist erupted around Duan Tianlang. He was extremely decisive and immediately chose to burn his blood essence to escape. However, just as he was about to escape, a crimson figure suddenly appeared beside him and brought him to Chu Xiu's side. Chu Xiu's face was still pale, and his body was even on the verge of collapse. He strangled Duan Tianlang's neck, but his hand was like an iron fist. No matter how much true qi Duan Tianlang burst out of his body, he couldn't break free. Duan Tianlang still wanted to say something, but Chu Xiu wouldn't give him the chance to speak. The next moment, Chu Xiu exerted force and broke Duan Tianlang's neck. Even before dying, Duan Tianlang's eyes showed a trace of relief. In his nightmares, this was not the first time this scene had appeared. Seeing that Chu Xiu's body was shaking slightly, Mu Zi immediately rushed up to support Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu gently waved his hand. With the undying demon pill, he didn't need to worry about his injuries. As long as he had the strength to repair them, they would recover sooner or later. Chu Xiu looked at Duanmu Qianshan. Duanmu Qianshan also sighed and said, "Kill." As soon as his voice fell, some of the martial artists present suddenly made their moves and began to massacre the martial artists of the Azure Dragon Society wantonly. Although Bu Tiannan was now dead, no one could guarantee that they didn't want to surrender. The struggle for power was cold-blooded and heartless. As long as you stood on the wrong side, there were only two outcomes. Go to heaven and be rich, or go to hell and be reincarnated. Duanmu Qianshan glanced at the dragon head that had chosen to remain neutral. The dragon head suddenly trembled and hurriedly said, "Second dragon head, although I didn't say anything before, I also couldn't stand Bu Tiannan's way of doing things. However, everyone knows Bu Tiannan's personality. Even if I say something, he won't listen." Duanmu Qianshan said indifferently, "For now, put down your identity as the fourth dragon head. We'll talk about it later." The current situation was sensitive. Duanmu Qianshan wouldn't let an indecisive person continue to be one of the 7 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. The fourth dragon head sighed and took off his mask and bamboo hat. He stood to the side and waited for his punishment. He also knew that Duanmu Qianshan was being merciful by sparing his life at this time. Just when everyone thought that Duanmu Qianshan was going to announce that from today onward, he pointed at Chu Xiu and said in a deep voice, "From today onward, Lord Chu Xiu is the new great dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society." Apart from those who already knew the news and were Duanmu Qianshan's confidants, the others were in an uproar and started discussing. It wasn't that they wanted to oppose Chu Xiu, but this matter came too suddenly. They naturally wouldn't oppose Duanmu Qianshan becoming the great dragon head. After all, this position originally belonged to Duanmu Qianshan. Moreover, they had seen Duanmu Qianshan's contributions to the Blue Dragon Society over the years. However, to put it bluntly, Chu Xiu was still an outsider. Although he was from the Blue Dragon Society and had killed the Longevity Sword sect before, everyone was still somewhat against it. Duanmu Qianshan sighed and shook his head. I know that this news is hard for everyone to accept for now. However, apart from Lord Chu Xiu, who else is qualified to be the Great Dragon Head? In terms of status, Lord Chu Xiu was originally from the Blue Dragon Society. If it weren't for some despicable people secretly stirring up trouble, Lord Chu Xiu would be one of the 7 great dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. In terms of strength, everyone has seen that Lord Chu Xiu just killed Butian. Is that not enough? Seeing that everyone wanted to say something, Duanmu Qianshan immediately waved his hand and said, I know what everyone wants to say. What you want to say is that I can also be the great dragon head. Duanmu Qianshan smiled bitterly and pointed at himself. Everyone still hasn't seen my current state? I'm already old and can't fight anymore. In a battle between people of the same realm, I can only sneak attack from the side. If I fight head-on, how can I compete with the elites on the reputation list? I don't have the qualifications. Only official Chu does. That battle just now consumed at least a few years of my lifespan. If everyone really cares about this old man, then hurry up and let official Chu take the position so that I can rest in peace for a period of time. Hearing Duanmu Qianshan's words, everyone present lowered their heads and saluted. Greetings, great dragon head. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, Get up, there's no need to be so polite. Actually, I know that most of you still have doubts about me. However, it doesn't matter. Anyone who follows me, Chu Xiu, will never regret it. Chu Xiu said briefly. He glanced at Butiannan's corpse and asked, Is there a place in the Blue Dragon Society where the heads of past generations are buried? Duanmu Qianshan hesitated for a moment before saying, Yes, there is. The Blue Dragon Society has an independent space that was opened up by the Four Elements sect in the past. It's not too big and can't fit many things. Therefore, it's used to bury the heads of past generations of Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, Bury Butianen there as well. If he doesn't take the position of Great Dragon Head, he will definitely be a sharp sword for the Blue Dragon Society. Today's situation is only because the Blue Dragon Society put someone who isn't suitable in this position. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present had a better impression of him. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu was buying people's hearts by doing this, at least they didn't have to worry about things like settling accounts in the future if they followed a broad-minded person. At this time, Song Shao looked at Duan Tianlang's corpse on the ground and asked, Chu? No, Great Dragon Head, what should we do with this guy? Chu Xiu glanced at the corpse and said, Chop him up and throw him out to feed the dogs. Song Shao, Bu Tiannan was dead, so Chu Xiu had successfully taken over the position of Great Dragon Head. However, there were still a bunch of loose ends that needed to be dealt with. Fortunately, Duanmu Qianshan was here, so Chu Xiu threw all of these to Duanmu Qianshan. It wasn't that Chu Xiu believed in Duanmu Qianshan, but he knew that Duanmu Qianshan had no other choice but to assist him wholeheartedly. Duanmu Qianshan was already so old. After killing Bu Tiannan, he welcomed Chu Xiu. If he didn't help Chu Xiu manage the Blue Dragon Society well, where would he find someone strong enough to take over the Blue Dragon Society? Therefore, Duanmu Qianshan was also gambling. He was gambling that Chu Xiu was strong now and would become even stronger in the future. He was so strong that he could ignore the karma of any strong enemy. Ever since the war between the righteous and demonic paths 500 years ago, the pugilistic world had been peaceful for 500 years. However, when had the pugilistic world ever been peaceful? Duanmu Qianshan saw it very clearly. In the chaotic times of the pugilistic world, you either had to be strong enough, or you had to find someone strong enough to rely on. In any case, he had placed all his bets on Chu Xiu. As for victory or defeat, it was all up to fate. From that day on, Duanmu Qianshan began to deal with these things and temporarily closed the Blue Dragon Society. He warned those who saw Chu Xiu to keep Chu Xiu's identity a secret, and began to re-establish various rules and so on. Chu Xiu also began to peacefully recuperate in the Blue Dragon Society in seclusion. Originally, when killing the Lu family's ancestor and the Sun family's ancestor, Chu Xiu was still a little unaccustomed to his own strength. This was because the Sun family's ancestor and the Lu family's ancestor were relatively weak among the true fire spirit refinement realm experts that Chu Xiu had fought before. The Sun family's ancestor was at the same level as Feng Jinwu. The Lu family's ancestor was slightly stronger, but he was only slightly stronger after going all out. Opponents at this level could no longer temper Chu Xiu's strength. However, fighting with Bu Tiannan, who was in the top 10 of the list, benefited Chu Xiu a lot. Chapter 866. While Chu Xiu was in seclusion, the Jianghu was in an uproar. The Blue Dragon Society released the news that Bu Tiannan had died in the Blue Dragon Society's infighting, and the new big dragon head was Lin Shui, who had successfully killed Bu Tiannan. No one doubted that this news was fake, because it was released by the Blue Dragon Society's 36 Big Dipper divisions at the same time. Unless the entire Blue Dragon Society was playing this kind of silly joke on the Jianghu. However, what they couldn't accept was that Lin Shui was in the top 10 of the Wind Cloud list, a powerhouse who could stir up the Jianghu. How could he die so easily? The wind sweeping tower was the craziest. According to the rules, Lin Shui had killed Bu Tiannan, so he should naturally take his place and become the 7th on the Wind Cloud list. However, the problem was, how should they write the information? The information of the other powerhouses on the Wind Cloud list was piled up like a mountain. If it was more detailed, it could be written into several books. However, when it came to Lin Shui, there were only 2 records left. One was that he had destroyed the Longevity Sword sect, and the other was that he had killed Bu Tiannan. Everyone in the Jianghu knew about this. It was a shame for the wind-sweeping tower to have this kind of information. However, the crux of the matter was that Lin Shui seemed to have popped out from a crack in a rock, making it impossible for anyone to find out anything about him. However, since the Blue Dragon Society had changed to a new big dragon head, they had become much more low-key. They even began to give up some of the too simple tasks, which made the people in the Jianghu feel a lot more relaxed. The killers of the Blue Dragon Society were too unscrupulous before, and with the madman Bu Tiannan, some people were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Now that Bu Tiannan was dead, the people of the Blue Dragon Society had calmed down a bit. No matter who Lin Shui was, he had done a good deed. At this time, inside the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu's body was still burning with layers of golden and silver true fire. Refining the body with true fire was a method that could not be stopped once it was used. For most people, this kind of pain was unbearable. Of course, Chu Xiu couldn't bear it either, so he had to endure it with all his might. Even if he forcibly blocked the pain with his mind power, it would still be useless. This was because the true fire body refinement method was mainly to refine one's own body. The composition of the human body was complex and closely connected. Every tiny meridian needed to be carefully refined. Once one lost their sense of pain, it was very easy for problems to occur. An hour later, Chu Xiu's inner force true fire extinguished. He stretched his neck and walked out of the seclusion chamber. It took almost a month for Chu Xiu to completely recover from the injuries he suffered from fighting with Bu Tiannan. There was Shan's essence, sword and Shan and Qi Shan Wu Wu, demon and Su dragon, Chu and Xiu Shan Ming sword Wu Shan. Shan, Wu, Ling spirit, King Ming spirit King Ming. Dan, Shan Shan Ming Chu began. Spirit, Shan moreover, the more familiar Chu Xiu was with the power of the undying demon pill, the more shocked he was. The eternal demon elixir didn't have any great power, so even the people in the Yinma clan, Wei Shuya, who had the method to cultivate the eternal demon elixir, were not very familiar with the usage and true power of the eternal demon elixir. However, Chu Xiu, who had experienced rebirth, could sense the true power of the eternal demon pill. Everything in the world was born and destroyed, so true immortality was just a false proposition. However, the indestructible demon pill had found a balance between life and death. Only those who had truly died once would know how to truly be indestructible. Destruction and reconstruction. That was how it was. Dugu Weiwei was the one who invented the indestructible demon pill. Chu Xiu, with an indestructible demon pill that didn't even have a manual, was able to reconstruct his body and resurrect, let alone Dugu Weiwei. Most likely right now, Dugu Weiwei was looking at him from some place. Was he trying to take over Dugu Weiwei's body? Or was he Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation? The more Chu Xiao knew, the more confused he became. In any case, there was only one thing he could do now, and that was to increase his power and make himself stronger, so strong that he could deal with everything. After Chu Xiao walked out of the seclusion room, he casually strolled around the Blue Dragon Society. In fact, apart from gatherings, most of the time, the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society was quite empty. The quality of the assassins in the Blue Dragon Society was very high. Apart from a few people who had a few small hobbies, most of them only had 2 daily activities: training and carrying out missions. Chu Xiao originally wanted to find Duanmu Qianshan and ask if anything happened after the Blue Dragon Society changed the big dragon head. However, when he passed by the training field in the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society, he saw Mu Zi practicing her saber there. Mu Zi's way of practicing the saber was very clumsy. In front of her was a puppet covered with arrays that could absorb energy. Mu Zi gathered all the energy in her body and slashed at the puppet. Then, she repeated the process, slashing again and again. Although this method seemed clumsy and monotonous, martial arts cultivation was like this. There were no shortcuts. On the contrary, those who practiced some fancy things in the early stages would not be able to go far. It was obvious that Mu Zi's method had been taught by someone who understood. After all, she had Duanmu Qianshan as her adoptive father. Although Duanmu Qianshan used a staff, martial arts was something like that. If one didn't know how to use it, wouldn't he know how to practice? When Mu Zi saw Chu Xiao appear, she immediately put away her saber, wiped the sweat on her forehead, and ran over. She said with surprise, "Young Master Chu, your injuries have healed?" Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Actually, it wasn't a big deal at the beginning." "All right, I remember that you used a sword at the beginning. Why are you using a saber now?" "Actually, women aren't good at using sabers. Saber arts focus on momentum, big movements, and advancing courageously. Although there are saber arts that focus on strange sharpness, it's difficult to achieve great Dao." Lu Jianghe, who was in the Blood Soul Pearl, slapped his head. He wanted to complain, but in the end, he couldn't even be bothered to say it. Chu Xiao was really hopeless. A lady came over to ask if his injuries were healed with concern, but he told her that he wasn't suitable to practice the saber. This kind of guy actually had so many beautiful women circling around him. It was simply illogical. Mu Zi smiled and said, "Actually, I liked using the saber from the beginning. However, my father said that women should use swords. Saber arts seem too fierce. Now that the Mu clan is gone, no one cares about me. Of course I can use whatever I want." Adoptive father said the same thing as young Master Chu, but I don't feel that it's suitable. At my current realm, I can't feel anything like martial arts. I only know that my saber can kill, and that's enough. All I ask is that my saber can protect me and help me kill those who want to harm me. I'll be satisfied. At this point, Mu Zi looked at Chu Xiao and said softly, "Young Master Chu, Mu Zi is no longer the Mu Zi of the past. I can't even kill my enemies with my own hands. Other than self-protection, I practice the saber with all my might because I want to help the people I want to protect when they are in danger. Instead of crying in sorrow, I want to take my saber and fight for them to avenge them." Chu Xiao nodded and patted Mu Zi's shoulder. He said, "Not bad. It wasn't easy for you to walk out of that incident. In fact, with your current strength, you can completely stand shoulder to shoulder with the top few on the Longhu list." When Chu Xiao first met Mu Zi, he could tell that this girl's talent was not too good. After all, she came from a small clan. Talent and bloodline were indeed important. At least, the probability of a small clan producing a genius was far lower than a large clan like the Shongshui Ying clan. But in these few years, Mu Zi relied on her own willpower to catch up. Even with Duanmu Qianshan's help, it was not easy for her. At this moment, Lu Jianghe, who was in the Blood Soul bead, wanted to bang his head against the wall if he was not tied to the bronze pillar. "She has already said so much, but you don't hurry up and hug her to comfort her. Instead, you even patted her on the shoulder. Do you think she is like Tangya and Yen Bugue?" Lu Jianghe endured for a long time. He resisted the urge to ridicule Chu Xiao. As the saying goes, when one is under the eaves, even the Devil Lord has to bow his head. Chu Xiao had already promised him that when Chu Xiao reached the peak of the true fire spirit refinement state, he would let him out. Therefore, Lu Jianghe was also trying his best to control his mouth and not offend Chu Xiao. Although this promise seemed to be deliberately making things difficult for Chu Xiu in the eyes of others, it was actually very sincere on Chu Xiu. Although Lu Jiang he did not follow Chu Xiu for a long time, he clearly saw Chu Xiu's various trump cards and the extent of his potential. The peak of the true fire spirit refinement state, even in the era of heroes 500 years ago, would be considered an expert. But with Chu Xiu's current potential, it was only a matter of time before he reached this state. In order to get out of this broken bead as soon as possible, Lu Jiang he could only try his best to control his mouth. However, with his talkative personality, if Chu Xiu did something worth ridiculing again, he could not guarantee that he would be able to control himself. Fortunately, someone else came over at this time. It was Luo Fei Hung, who was brought to look for Chu Xiu by an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. Previously, Chu Xiu had given her the key to enter and exit the Blue Dragon Society. If anything happened, Luo Fei Hung could come here to look for him. However, as soon as he saw Mu Zi here, Luo Fei Hung rushed over and held Mu Zi's arm, hugging her waist, and said with a smile, "Sister Mu, are you practicing your saber? Let's spar when we have time. When we're tired, we can take off your clothes and soak in a hot spring. It's so nice." Mu Zi was stunned for a moment. "Ha! Hot spring?" Luo Fei Hung nodded vigorously. "That's right. There's a natural hot spring at the 9 Branch Hall's encampment. If you cultivate in it, it will help speed up your qi. Let's go and try it one day." Chu Xiu held his head and interrupted Luo Fei Hung's flirting. "Say, what are you doing here today?" Luo Fei Hung slapped his head and said, "Oh, something happened to that cheap disciple of yours, so I came to pass on the news." Chapter 867. When Luo Fei Hung said that his cheap disciple was in trouble, Chu Xiu didn't know who she was talking about at first. Then, he suddenly remembered that Luo Fei Hung was talking about Yi Xiao. Ever since the Sun and Lu clans matters ended, Yi Xiao was thrown to Han Lei and Song Zhao's Heavenly Assassin's branch to gain experience. Luo Fei Hung could see that Yi Xiao was just a cheap disciple of Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu also thought so. Chu Xiu gave him a chance, but it was up to him whether he could grasp it or not. Chu Xiu didn't have the leisure to be someone else's nanny, nor did he have the patience to carefully train a disciple. Chu Xiu frowned and asked, "What happened to him? Did he fail his mission?" Luo Fei Hung replied, "It's not a failure. It seems like he found something amazing and is being chased." Chu Xiu was stunned when he heard this. "Chase after me? Chasing after the Blue Dragon Society? Which sect has the guts to do this?" It wasn't that Butian-nan didn't do anything good during his time in power. At least, thanks to his crazy personality, the Blue Dragon Society's notoriety wasn't weak. In the past, only the Blue Dragon Society's assassins killed people. No one had ever heard of the Blue Dragon Society being chased. Fu Yang Wang Clan. Never heard of it. Chu Xiu shook his head. This name sounded like it was some kind of mediocre force. Luo Fei Hung said, "It's normal that you haven't heard of it. The Fu Yang Wang Clan isn't that strong in terms of martial arts. They are an aristocratic family that specializes in formations, similar to my foster father's Mirror Lake Villa. The entire clan specializes in formations. The Fu Yang Wang clan's ancestor is one of the current generation's formation grandmasters, Wang Daozong. That cheap disciple of yours accepted a mission from the Wang family to kill someone from another small family, and then he seemed to have discovered something wrong. He actually didn't kill the other party, but instead fled, so he was chased by the Wang family. Right now, your Blue Dragon Society doesn't have any reinforcements around Fu Yang, so he didn't ask for reinforcements. It was only when he ran into one of my subordinates that he sent the message. Originally, I wanted to help, but the array masters of the Fu Yang Wang family are really hard to deal with. I'm not afraid of them one-on-one, but once they start fighting, they will throw out a bunch of messy array formations. It's simply terrible, so I can only come to you." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Yi Zhao's current situation was actually related to Chu Xiu. At present, the Blue Dragon Society was undergoing a great change. Not only did Butian-nan die, but many other warriors who were on Butian-nan's side also died. Therefore, a large-scale change of power was needed. As a result, all the elites of the Blue Dragon Society and the leaders of the 36 divisions were in the Blue Dragon Society. Yi Xiao really couldn't find anyone to help him. However, what made Chu Xiu even more curious was, what did this kid find? Yi Xiao knew the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. If he was blinded by greed for some common treasures, it definitely didn't fit Yi Xiao's personality. Moreover, the Fu Yong Wang family was a force established by the current generation's formation grandmaster, so everyone had to give the Wang family some face. In reality, the Wang family was just like the Mirror Lake Villa. When they needed someone, they would call them master, and master intimately. When they didn't need to use their strength, no matter how much face they had, it was still useless against strength. Therefore, logically speaking, the Wang family wouldn't dare to touch the people of the Blue Dragon Society. But now, the other party actually dared to openly hunt down the people of the Blue Dragon Society. This was simply crazy. Obviously, this Yi Xiao really did find something that the other party really cared about. Chu Xiu thought for a moment and said, "After recuperating for so long, it's time to exercise. Do you know where Yi Xiao escaped to?" Luo Feiheng shook his head and said, "This Yi Xiao is also very slippery. He secretly ran to many places. I only know his general location, but I really can't find him." "That's fine. Give me the general location, and I will take care of the rest." After getting Yi Xiao's general location, Chu Xiu asked Mu Zi to inform Duanmu Qianshan and left. Seeing that Chu Xiu had left, Luo Feiheng's eyes lit up as he hugged Mu Zi and said, "Little sister Mu, how about we go to the hot spring?" Mu Zi. Huh. She still couldn't understand why Luo Feiheng was so obsessed with the hot spring. In a rundown temple in the forest of Fuyang County, Yi Xiao clutched the wound on his abdomen. He endured the intense pain and sprinkled medicinal powder on it. He didn't even dare to make a sound for fear of causing a commotion. He had been chased for several days. The Wang family of Fuyang wasn't considered strong, but they had all sorts of array formation techniques that were hard to defend against. Yi Xiao had never dealt with such a martial artist before, so he had suffered a huge loss when they had just exchanged blows. At the thought of this, Yi Xiao's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. During this period of time in the Heavenly Assassins branch, he had been carrying out missions and cultivating crazily. His persistence had left the other old assassins of the Heavenly Assassins branch speechless. Yi Xiao was so crazy because he knew how difficult it was for him to have everything he had now. He had the cultivation technique that Chu Xiu had given him, but he wasn't considered an official disciple of Chu Xiu. However, because of this identity, although Han Lei and Song Xiao didn't take much care of him in the Assassins division, they still gave him plenty of cultivation resources. Moreover, every time he returned from a mission, the two of them would give him a detailed analysis of what he was lacking in and so on. Yi Xiao knew that all of this was because of Chu Xiu and his identity. Therefore, all he could do was to continuously climb up and make sure that he could keep up with Lord Chu Xiu's footsteps. Including the things he had discovered this time, he could prove to others that he, Yi Xiao, was very useful and not useless. At this moment, there was a commotion outside the rundown temple. More than 10 martial artists surrounded them. Yi Xiao picked up the knife on the ground and said coldly, "Do you know what you are doing? If you kill me today, the Blue Dragon Society will destroy your Wang family in the future. We won't rest until one of us is dead." The leading martial artist of the Wang family took out an array disc and sneered. "If we kill you, who will know that this was done by the Wang family? Every year, countless assassins of the Blue Dragon Society die while carrying out missions. It doesn't matter if you die or not. You can only blame yourself for being greedy. Why did you listen to things that you shouldn't have?" Yi Xiao gritted his teeth and mobilized the blood in his body. He still had a trump card that he hadn't used yet. It was the blood transformation blade that Chu Xiu had taught him in the past. However, this technique consumed his own vital energy. Yi Xiao could not guarantee that he would be able to escape after using the blood-dissipating saber. But apart from risking his life, did he have any other choice? Just as Yi Xiao was about to risk his life, a faint voice sounded. Who was the one who said that he wanted to kill the people of the Blue Dragon Society? A figure wearing a blood-red robe descended from the sky. That powerful aura caused the faces of the people of the Wang family to be filled with fear. What was the most widely spread news in the pugilistic world recently? It was the news that the chief dragon of the Blue Dragon Society, Wuxia Nan, had been killed in an internal conflict, and the Blue Dragon Society had changed to a new chief dragon. And the clothes of this person in front of them were exactly the same as the new chief dragon of the legends. However, The people of the Wang family never expected that they would provoke the chief dragon of the Blue Dragon Society just because they wanted to kill an ordinary assassin. Before the people of the Wang family could say anything, Chu Xiu waved his hand. Countless blood shadows scattered, and the faces of the martial artists of the Wang family instantly turned pale. Their bodies fell to the ground one after another. In an instant, all the blood in their bodies had been sucked dry. Chu Xiu threw a pill to Yi Xiao. After he swallowed it, he asked, "What did you find that made the people of the Wang family ignore your identity as a member of the Blue Dragon Society and hunt you down so arrogantly?" Yi Xiao took a deep breath and said something shocking. This subordinate discovered the secret of the battle between the Devil Sex sect master Dugu Weiwei and the immortal Ning Xuanji. Hearing this, Chu Xiu was shocked. One must know that the battle between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had always been a mystery. A mystery that had troubled the pugilistic world for 500 years. Because the battle was too intense, there were no spectators at all, and no one dared to go and watch. Moreover, it was said that the area of the battle was extremely wide, from West Kunlun all the way to West Chu, and then to Eastern Qi. In the end, they completely disappeared without a trace. Not even a trace of the battle could be found. Because of this, no one dared to say that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji were already dead. The old celestial master was from the same era as Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. He was still alive and well. Although he often shouted that his old bones wouldn't last for more than a few years, he had been shouting this for more than 100 years. Until recently, when he fought with Yi Xiaonan, he didn't seem to be dying. Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji's strength definitely far exceeded the old celestial masters. Since he was still alive, it was possible that the two of them were still alive. However, after so many years, people in the pugilistic world had also searched for them, but they didn't find any clues. Now that Yi Xiao said that he had discovered this secret, how could Chu Xiu not be shocked? Especially since this was closely related to him. Chu Xiu could be said to be the person who wanted to know if Dugu Weiwei was dead or alive the most. Yi Xiao calmed himself down and told Chu Xiu the details of the matter. In fact, the reason was simple. He had accepted a mission from the Wang family to assassinate another small family, the Zhou family. The Zhou family was also a family that relied on array formations for generations. However, they had long declined and only relied on selling some low-end array formations for a living. When Yi Xiao decided to kill them, the Zhou family immediately guessed that he was sent by the Wang family and told him the secret of why the Wang family wanted to kill him. Because the ancestors of the Zhou family and the Wang family were both at the level of array formation grandmasters, the two of them relied on deducing array formations and finally found the last place where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji fought. They also discovered the secret of why the two of them disappeared. It was because Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei were so powerful that they could tear the void apart. The last place where the two of them fought happened to be the weakest point in the space. Under the shock of their fight, the void was torn apart and the two of them directly entered another space. Therefore, there was no trace left at all. Chapter 868. What Yi Xiao said was indeed shocking, but there was a certain degree of logic to it. People would not disappear into thin air. Even if they disappeared into thin air, they had to leave some traces. The only explanation was that he had entered another space. This was a very reasonable explanation. Chu Xiu asked, "What happened after that? Why didn't the Wang and Zhou families explore that place? Why did they turn against each other now?" Yi Xiao said, "According to my inquiry, the Zhou family said that although the space was weak, it was a complete space. It was only because Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei were too strong that they tore it apart. If it were anyone else, even if they were at the heaven and earth mystic realm, they wouldn't be able to do it. Therefore, after they recorded the fluctuations of that space, the weakest position, and other things about formations, they went back to study how to break the space in that place. Originally, the two sides worked together, but they didn't succeed after studying for a lifetime. Their descendants also kept the secret and continued to study, but the power of the two sides was still unbalanced. The Wang family produced several formation grandmasters and became stronger and stronger, while the Zhou family became weaker and weaker. Now, the Zhou family had successfully studied the key to break that space, and the Zhou family believed that if they could do it, the Wang family would definitely be able to do it too. However, after such a long time, the Wang family didn't come to them to work together. Obviously, it was because the Wang family wanted to kill them and monopolize this secret. In fact, the Zhou family's guess was correct. The Wang family hired me to kill the Zhou family's people. After I arrived at the Zhou family told me everything and even gave me the key to break open that space. As he spoke, Yi Xiao handed a round stone and half of a map to Chu Xiu. This was given to me by the Zhou family. He said that an ordinary man's wealth will get him into trouble. The Zhou family should have thought of this long ago, because the Zhou family never had the right to keep this kind of secret. Now that they have finally refined the key that can break that space, it can be considered that they have fulfilled their ancestors' wish and can hand over these things completely. This half of the map is where they found the weakest point in that space. The Zhou family and the Wang family will each take half. Chu Xiu took the so-called key and looked at it. This thing was ridiculously round, and there were circles of patterns on it that looked like growth rings. However, upon closer inspection, it was actually carved with tiny array patterns. Chu Xiu didn't know much about arrays, but this thing didn't look ordinary. Moreover, the Zhou family wouldn't lie to Yi Xiao at this time. Speaking of which, the Zhou clan was quite open-minded. They actually took out a treasure of this level just like that. Of course, from Chu Xiu's point of view, the Zhou family should have completely lost hope in the end. Previously, the Zhou clan still had a glimmer of hope for this matter. However, after seeing that the Wang clan had sent assassins to kill them, the Zhou clan came to a realization that keeping this thing was probably not a treasure but a disaster. Return to the Assassin's branch first. No, go directly to the Blue Dragon Society and find the second dragon head, Duanmu Qianshan. Ask him to arrange a position in the Blue Dragon Society headquarters for you. After you recover, you can work in the Blue Dragon Society headquarters. Yes, thank you, Official Chu. Yi Zhao's face was filled with excitement. He knew that as long as he did a good job in front of Chu Xiu, he would be rewarded. In the Blue Dragon Society, the treatment of the Assassin's branch and the headquarters was obviously not on the same level. This was especially so since Chu Xiu had sent Duanmu Qianshan, the second dragon head, to look after him. This time, Yi Xiao did a good job. Of course, this was not only because he brought such big news to Chu Xiu, but also because his way of doing things was very much in line with Chu Xiu's wishes. He knew what he should do and what he shouldn't do. The rules of the Blue Dragon Society were important, but this news was clearly more important than the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. This was called being flexible. Moreover, when Yi Xiao unexpectedly found out that he met the people from the 9 branches, he didn't tell them the truth and only asked them to ask for help. This was enough to prove Yi Zhao's cautiousness. Luo Feiheng could definitely be trusted, but the other 9 branches might not. Even Chu Xiu thought so. Therefore, Yi Zhao's cautiousness also avoided a lot of trouble. The potential he showed this time was enough for Chu Xiu to focus on nurturing him. At this time, in the Fuyang Prefecture's Wang family, Wang Daozong and a few other people in charge of the Wang family were sitting in the main hall with worried expressions, waiting for news. Wang Daozong appeared to be an old man in his 60s or 70s. His appearance was decent and he had a rather sage-like appearance. In Eastern Qi, and even among the formation masters in the entire underworld, he was one of the more famous ones. This was because the Wang family had a legacy. The Wang family's ancestor was a formation master. Although he wasn't as good as the Wang family's ancestor, formation masters in the underworld were incomparably precious. This was especially so for the non-top sections. They didn't have the ability to support formation masters, so they could only ask for help from formation masters like Wang Daozong. Of course, asking for Wang Daozong's help once was not cheap. Moreover, even when some of the top sects were arranging some large arrays, an array Dao Grandmaster would usually be too busy and would ask him for help. At this time, Wang Daozong was no longer as calm as he used to be. He was even a little anxious. He knew how important that secret was to the Wang family. If they found Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji's corpses and obtained their inheritance, the Wang family wouldn't just be a family that only knew how to set up formations in the future. He couldn't imagine that scene at all. After a while, Wang Daozong sighed and said, "If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have asked the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society to do this. I thought that the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society all followed the rules. I didn't expect these people to have no professional ethics at all." A middle-aged man stood up and said, "That's right. I already said that Big Brother's idea was not reliable. Why did he have to find some outsiders? Normally, the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society might follow the rules, but in front of such a precious treasure, who cares about that? It would have been better if we had done it ourselves. A slightly older cultivator said coldly. Easy for you to say. Back then, you didn't object to this. Do it ourselves? That's easy for you to say. Who in the entire Fuyang prefecture doesn't know about our relationship with the Zhou family? Our two families are aristocratic families. If we act rashly, not only will our Wang family's reputation be tarnished, but it will also arouse suspicion. Besides, apart from formations, who else in the Wang family is proficient in all kinds of killing methods? What if we don't do it well and someone escapes and spreads the news? Just as the two of them were about to argue, a cultivator suddenly barged in and said loudly, "Family head. Not good." The spirit blood left by third master and the others have all turned black. Everyone died in an instant. Hearing this, Wang Daozong immediately swayed and fell into a chair. He murmured, "Something big happened. Something big happened." The so-called spirit blood was a kind of formation that the Wang family had unearthed from ancient records. As long as someone left a drop of blood in the formation within a month, that person would die, and the blood in the formation would turn black. Normally, this effect should be able to last a lifetime. However, the Wang family's level was limited. They couldn't replicate the complete formation, so this time period was reduced to a month. But no matter how long it took, now that everyone had died at the same time, it could be imagined what kind of enemy they had encountered. There was a 99% chance that the culprit was the Blue Dragon Society. The news had already reached the Blue Dragon Society. Whether it was the Wang family's map of the final battle between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, or their key to break through space, these things were enough to arouse the attention of the Blue Dragon Society. Moreover, they were ruthless enough to hunt down the Blue Dragon Society. One could imagine what they would encounter. Everyone in the Wang family immediately panicked. This time, they really had no idea what to do. The terror of the Blue Dragon Society was directly linked to the word murder. Their Wang family was an aristocratic family based on the formation Dao. Now that they had provoked a behemoth like the Blue Dragon Society, even if they took out all their trump cards, it would be useless. Wang Daozong sighed and said, "I didn't expect that we would still fail. It seems that this kind of treasure is destined to not belong to our Wang family. Boss, find out the list of all the employers in our Wang family. As long as you can contact them in a short period of time, tell them the cause and effect of this matter." Wang Daozong was a formation master. Although the Wang family itself was inconspicuous, there were many large sects and experts who had cooperated with him. They might not be friends, but they could still contact each other. Not to mention, Wang Daozong wanted to give them such a big piece of news. The Wang family's eldest son suddenly stood up and said, "Father, if you do this, aren't you giving away all the hard work of our Wang family for many generations? From our ancestors until now, won't our Wang family be in vain in the end?" Wang Daozong revealed a bitter smile and said, "What else do you want? With the strength of our Wang family alone, what can we use to resist the Blue Dragon Society? We can only call everyone over. When the time comes, our Wang family will voluntarily offer those things in exchange for the protection of these large sections. We might even be able to win a little favor from them and help our Wang family in the future." At Wang Daozong's age, he had seen a lot of things. Although he was cautious in doing things, he was also much more reliable. At the very least, his idea was much better than being stubborn. At the same time, everyone in the Wang family was also regretting. If they hadn't chosen to keep this secret to themselves and killed their former ally, the Zhou family, they would probably have joined forces to explore that space by now. At that time, there would be Dugu Weiwei's inheritance and Ning Xuanji's inheritance. It would be just right for the two groups to divide it equally. However, greed ruined everything in the end. Chapter 869. Chu Xiu wanted to get the other half of the map from the Wang family. Of course, he wanted to eliminate the Wang family while he was at it. Therefore, he told Yi Xiao to return to the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society and asked Han Lei, Song Xiao, and the others to bring their men over. It wasn't because Chu Xiu was cruel, but because the Blue Dragon Society needed to maintain a strong deterrent. Now, the Blue Dragon Society had just experienced an internal strife. Bu Tiannan was dead, and he, the new head of the Great Dragon, was being watched by the whole underworld. Needless to say, his Smurf's reputation was not as good as Bu Tiannan's. Therefore, it was inevitable that some people would compare him with Bu Tiannan. Now that Chu Xiu didn't want to reveal his identity, he could only show his strength. If you touch me, I will eliminate your whole family. After Han Lei, Song Xiao, and the others arrived, Chu Xiu immediately brought his men to the Fu Yang Wang family. At this moment, in the Wang family, Wang Daozong looked at the seemingly amiable old Taoist in disbelief. The other party was the patriarch of the true martial arts sect, Sage Xianchen, Lu Chonglu. Actually, Wang Daozong didn't know Lu Chonglu. Even if he was a formation master, he didn't have the qualifications to befriend someone like Lu Chonglu. The person that Wang Daozong knew was Sage Guangning of the true martial arts sect. Sage Guangning was also an expert in formation master. In the past, when the true martial arts sect was repairing the formation master, he had invited Wang Daozong to help him. This time, Wang Daozong also passed the news to Sage Guangning. He didn't expect Lu Chonglu to come personally. Wang family head, is what you said in the news true? Do you really know where the patriarch and Duga Weiwei went for their last battle? Lu Chonglu was usually calm and collected. However, at this moment, he was a little excited. Wang Daozong had underestimated the secret that these two families held, especially for the true martial arts sect. For so many years, the true martial arts sect had never given up on searching for their patriarch. If he was alive, they wanted to see him. Even if he was dead, they wanted to bring his body back. Of course, the inheritance within the body was also very important. Ning Xuanji didn't take away the cultivation techniques of the true martial sect. However, before the battle with Duga Weiwa, he had elevated his own martial Dao to the extreme. It was even stronger than the inherited cultivation techniques of the true martial sect. He didn't leave behind these martial Dao techniques. For so many years, the real martial arts sect had no clue. Now that they had finally obtained such a piece of information, it was worth it for him to come in person. Wang Daozong hurriedly said, "How would I dare to lie to you?" Daozong. The family head Xiu Daozong's world. Sect. Lu Daozong, I. Wang family families Daozong's Yan's families clan. Family Daozong's families clans family. S. Wang. Families Li. Wang clans families. Lu Chonglu frowned. He didn't expect that this matter was related to the Blue Dragon Society. However, it was normal. Lu Chonglu had been in the underworld for his whole life. What had he not seen? If the Wang family wasn't in trouble, would he be willing to tell him such a secret? For so many years, the Wang family had always kept this secret in their heart. Now that they had taken it out, it was probably thanks to the threat of the Blue Dragon Society. Lu Chonglu was just a shield. However, Lu Chonglu was still kind. He didn't expose the Wang family's thoughts. He also didn't blame them for using him. He just said calmly, "Don't worry. Since I have taken your things, I will naturally help your Wang family block this disaster." After Wang Daozong heard this, he immediately took out half of the map and the box with the key. He took out a key that was almost the same as the Zhou families and gave it to Lu Chonglu. Lu Chonglu asked in surprise, "You made so many keys?" Wang Daozong laughed dryly and said, "One key can only let one person enter. So, I made a little more. However, when the other powerhouses come, I will give them to them." Lu Chongliu's expression suddenly changed. "What? You also told this news to others?" Lu Chonglu could imagine that if other people discovered the inheritance of Duga Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, they wouldn't care whether it belonged to the true martial sect or not. They would definitely rush forward and start to snatch it. Before Wang Daozong could say anything, a murderous aura suddenly descended from outside. This made Wang Daozong's eyes reveal a touch of horror. He said in horror, "The people of the Blue Dragon Society are here." At this moment, outside the Wang family's residence, Chu Xiu had just approached the Wang family's residence when the radiance of a magic array lit up. It was obvious that the magic array had sensed the murderous aura of Chu Xiu and the others and had started to defend. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, this magic array is quite sensitive." Song Xiao, who was at the side, said, "After all, this Wang Daozong relied on the magic array to make a name for himself. He is quite capable. It is said that his attainments in the magic array are only one step away from the great grandmaster level." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "This is not good. Can't a magic array master just study the magic array? Why must he covet the martial arts inheritance? This is putting the cart before the horse. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the heavenly law war case in his hand transformed into the great halberd and slashed down with a loud bang. A powerful aura erupted, and the magic array in front of the Wang family's residence began to shatter layer by layer. The Wang family's great magic array couldn't even withstand one move from Chu Xiu. At this moment, a horsetail whisk swept over with a strong aura, blocking the power of Chu Xiu's halberd. Lu Chongliu's figure appeared at the door, and he said in a deep voice, "Everyone, forgive and forget. You have already gotten the news. Do you still want to kill us?" True martial arts cult, Lu Chonglu? Chu Xiu squinted at Lu Chonglu, then glanced at Wang Daozong, who was hiding behind Lu Chonglu. He suddenly understood what was going on. Although the Wang family had done something stupid due to greed, they were not all fools. They also knew that they couldn't stop the Blue Dragon Society by themselves. It seemed that they had leaked the news in exchange for other people's help. "You know me?" Lu Chonglu was also looking at Chu Xiu at this time with a puzzled expression. This should be the new great dragon of the Blue Dragon Society, Lin Shui, who had just killed Butian-nan. But the problem was that he didn't feel the aura of the true fire spirit refinement realm from Lin Shui. The other party was actually only at the real pellet state. In that case, how did Lin Shui kill Butian-nan with the cultivation of the real pellet state? Chu Xiu said in a hoarse voice. Who in the pugilistic world doesn't know the master of the true martial arts cult? If it was just news about Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, I wouldn't have killed them. But this Wang family is bold enough to want to kill the people of the Blue Dragon Society. If we keep them alive, where is the dignity of the Blue Dragon Society? Lu Chonglu frowned and glanced at Wang Daozong. The Wang family didn't tell him about this. At this moment, numerous auras came from the surroundings, and every single one of them was incomparably powerful. There were two people at the front. One was the true fire spirit refinement realm, and the other was the martial Dao true pellet state. One of them was Chu Xiu's acquaintance, Ying Bailu, while the other was a middle-aged cultivator whom he was unfamiliar with. However, his appearance was somewhat similar to Ying Bailu's. Although he was middle-aged, he still had a refined and elegant appearance. Chu Xiu also guessed the identity of the other party. This person should be the Shongshui Ying clan's master of this generation, Ying Zhao. The Ying family also attached great importance to the news about Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. They originally planned to send Ying Sanshu, but Ying Sanshu had been in retreat recently, so Ying Zhao came in person. As for Ying Bailu, he was now ready to take over the position of the family master, so whenever the Ying family had something big or small, no matter who came to deal with it, they would bring him along and provide him with experience. After the Ying family, there was also a true fire spirit refinement realm martial artist wearing armor and a red cloak. He looked fierce and carried a huge saber on his back. After seeing Chu Xiu, there was a strange expression on his face, and he sneered, Butian-nan was actually killed by a real pellet state martial artist. He is simply a piece of trash. From the martial artist's dress and tone, Chu Xiu could also recognize his identity. This person was the chief hall master of the White Tiger Hall, the sworn enemy of the Blue Dragon Society, Bloody Blade, Helian Chongfeng. Speaking of which, this person was quite unlucky. The strength of the White Tiger Hall was not weak, and each of them was a natural warrior. However, this Helian Chongfeng happened to encounter Butian-nan at his peak, and he was beaten by Butian-nan. Chu Xiu heard from Duanmu Qianshan that Butian-nan broke out in a rare state of madness after fusing with the Azure Dragon blood. He chased Helian Chongfeng all the way from Eastern Qi to West Chu, abruptly knocking Helian Chongfeng from the true fire spirit refinement realm to the real pellet state, and even broke half of the bones in his body. It was miserable. However, Helian Chongfeng was also lucky. He abruptly dragged on until the power of Butian-nan's Azure Dragon blood was exhausted, and it even began to backfire. Just like Chu Xiu before, Butian-nan's own blood was extracted, leaving only the Azure Dragon blood in an uncontrollable state. If the fight continued, Butian-nan himself would be in danger, so Helian Chongfeng escaped. However, this kind of injury was not light. From then on, the White Tiger Hall joined the Eastern Qi Imperial Court and cooperated with them. Helian Chongfeng had also been recuperating. Now that he had returned to the world, it was unknown whether it was because his injury had healed and he had returned to his peak, or because he heard the news of Butian-nan's death. After Helian Chongfeng, a few people from the Eastern Qi imperial court also came. The leader was an old man wearing a brocade dragon robe. Chu Xiu did not recognize this person. It was Song Xiao who recognized him and told Chu Xiu that this person was a master of the Eastern Qi imperial court, Lord Gaoping Lu Zhanlu, a close relative of the royal family, who had been guarding the royal family for 3 generations. There were also several real pellet state martial artists behind him, all of whom were masters of the Eastern Qi imperial court. They were all people of Eastern Qi, but the White Tiger Hall and the Eastern Qi imperial court came in 2 groups. It was conceivable that the relationship between them did not seem to be so harmonious. Immediately after, another person from the Eastern Qi imperial court came. Seeing this person, Chu Xiu's eyes showed a trace of imperceptible coldness. This person was the real fire spirit refining state powerhouse of the Chunyang Dao sect, the head of the 6 Taoist guardians, Zhang Yunzi, one of the group of people who hit Chu Xiu when he was down in the past. Chapter 870. The moment he saw Zhang Yunzi, several killing methods popped up in Chu Xiu's mind. It was not that Chu Xiu was sinister, but he was such a person. If he lost, he would hold a grudge. If he won, he would kill your family. At the Illusionary Realm 6, he did suffer a loss. He was desperately fought by the old monk Jingchan Zhizong, and a group of people hit him when he was down. After being trapped in the Blood Soul Bead for half a year, in addition to sorting out his own martial Dao, Chu Xiu did most of the time was to figure out how to kill this group of people. He even made many plans for each of them. Among them, the Sun family's ancestor and the Lu family's ancestor were the easiest, and their loopholes were also the biggest, but Zhang Yunzi was a little difficult. The other party was the head of the 6 spiritual masters of Chunyang Dao sect. He spent most of his time meditating in the Tiangang Hall and rarely came out. He didn't expect the other party to come to him so soon. Of course, this was not a good place to kill and expose his identity. Lu Chonglu looked at these people and whispered to Wang Daozong, "Did you find all these people?" Wang Daozong nodded, but with Lu Chongliu's cultivation, he couldn't help but want to strangle this guy at this time. This was simply causing trouble. But at this time, when Wang Daozong saw that so many people had come, he breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was also glad that he had made these connections over the years. They were all the top forces on the Eastern Qi side. With so many real pellet state powerhouses and true fire spirit refinement state powerhouses here, Wang Daozong also seemed to have confidence. "Everyone, my Wang family is willing to take out all the keys. I only ask you to protect my Wang family once today, and half of the map of the weak point of the space is in the hands of the Blue Dragon Society." Upon hearing this, everyone present suddenly turned their eyes to Chu Xiu with different expressions in their eyes. Right at this moment, a coquettish voice suddenly rang out. "What key? What map? All of you are gathered here. Could it be that something good is about to appear? How about bringing me along?" A sweet fragrance blew over, and a woman draped in a light muslin slowly descended from the sky. She wore a translucent purple muslin dress, and the muslin skirt on her lower body began to split from the waist, revealing a pair of long white legs with a slight movement. Although her upper body was wrapped tightly, the muslin clothes were hazy. One could even see 2 red beans standing on her towering chest. The strangest thing was that she wore a mask on her face. The mask was a very abstract image of a goddess. It was as if there was a charming smile on her face at all times, making people unable to move their eyes away from her. Ying Zhao from the Ying family frowned. "Granny Flower Ghost, why are you here?" The woman rolled her eyes at Ying Zhao and said, "You're so annoying, calling me Madam Flower Ghost." The sun in the Great Western Desert was too strong, and she was afraid that her skin would be damaged, so she decided to take a stroll in the Central Plains and see if there were any good-looking young hubby willing to spend the night with her. "The person beside you is Ying Bailu, right?" He was indeed a handsome young man. "Why don't you follow me back? I promise you'll have so much fun that you'll forget home." Ying Zhao's gaze immediately turned gloomy. "You're of the same generation as my elder ancestor. What are you pretending for? How dare you set your sights on my Shangshui Ying clan? Do you believe that I won't destroy your Rakshasa sect?" Hearing Ying Zhao's words, Chu Xiu also knew who the person before him was. She was one of the true fire spirit refinement realm experts of the Rakshasa sect, one of the 8 sects of the Bright Devil lineage, Granny Flower Ghost. Chu Xiu had not had much contact with the people of the Rakshasa sect, because they were far away in the Great Western Desert. Feng Qixiao should have interacted with them quite a bit. Chu Xiu had only seen one Rakshasa sect martial artist during the great battle between the righteous and demonic sects on Mount Floating Jade. This granny flower ghost had an extremely high seniority. Just like what Ying Zhao said, she was of the same generation as their elder ancestor, Ying Si. However, she had a very bad reputation. This granny flower ghost had a lascivious nature. She even cultivated an evil dual cultivation technique. She absorbed the primordial yang of young martial artists to nourish herself, allowing her to maintain her youth and increase her lifespan. In the past, many young martial artists of the large sects had been tempted by her due to carelessness. In the end, they were completely crippled by her. This kind of behavior had infuriated many large sects back then. They even fought their way to the Great Western Desert to seek an explanation from the Rakshasa sect. Only then did the granny flower ghost restrain herself. Yo. I'm so scared. The granny flower ghost patted her chest, instantly causing a huge wave to surge. However, other than a few disciples of the Wang clan who were not strong enough to resist staring at her, the others treated her like air. Zhang Yunzi and the rest were already at their age. They wanted to, but they were powerless. Moreover, they knew the ins and outs of the granny flower ghost. Naturally, they would not be interested in an old woman like her. Ying Bailu was like a love saint. Of course, he would not be tempted by such a thing. As for Chu Xiu, this kind of low-level carnal temptation had no effect on him at all. Mei Qinglian's great beauty technique was 100 times stronger than the granny flower ghost's. Chu Xiu looked at the people around him. He took out his half of the map and said calmly, "Since everyone knows what happened, I won't say anything more. I'm willing to share the map with everyone. Let's explore that space together. However, I must annihilate the Wang clan. No one can come out unscathed after touching the people of the Blue Dragon Society." Lu Chonglu sighed and said, "Chief Dragon Head, according to what I know, the people of the Blue Dragon Society did not die. Instead, a large number of people from the Wang clan died. Where it is possible to forgive, one should forgive. The Wang clan has received enough of a lesson. Let's just forget about this matter." Chu Xiu said faintly, "Where it is possible to forgive? This is not the style of the Blue Dragon Society. For so many years, only the Blue Dragon Society kills people. When is it the turn of others to kill the Blue Dragon Society?" Before Lu Chonglu said anything, Zhang Yunzi said coldly, "Master Lu, you are giving this guy too much face. Do you think that your Blue Dragon Society is the former Kunlun devil cult? You can kill whoever you want? Today, I am waiting here, and you still want to kill innocent people. You are rebelling." As the head of the 6 Tiangang Hall Guardians, Zhang Yunzi's seniority in the Chunyang Dao sect could be said to be quite old, and he was also very concerned about seniority. If Bu Tiannan was here today, his tone might not be so harsh. However, this Lin Shui was just a nobody before, and he was only at the real pellet state. A real pellet state martial artist boasted shamelessly about killing people in front of him. He was simply ridiculous. Chu Xiu sneered at Zhang Yunzi. Because he was wearing a mask, no one could see his smile, but they could feel the murderous intention blooming in his eyes. As he stepped out, there was a sudden explosion under Chu Xiu's feet. The ground cracked, and his figure appeared in front of Zhang Yunzi in an instant. He punched with the momentum of breaking the sea. Mountain and sea fist scripture. Zhang Yunzi didn't expect Chu Xiu's speed to be so fast, and the power of this punch was so strong. Caught off guard, he abruptly unsheathed the sword in his hand that was imbued with scorching pure yang astral energy, and held it horizontally in front of him. The scorching pure yang astral energy that was like a scorching sun exploded out, but it was directly shattered by Chu Xiu's punch. The fist collided with the long sword, and a golden and silver internal force true fire emerged around Chu Xiu. The punch was like a mountain breaking, and Zhang Yunzi retreated step by step. The hand holding the sword began to tremble. Real fire body refining. Everyone's complexion suddenly changed. After experiencing the things of Chen Qingdi in the illusionary 6 realms, who didn't know the horror of real fire body refining? It was simply exerting the physical strength to the extreme. They did not expect that other than Emperor Chen Qingdi, there was actually someone else who had already taken this path and succeeded. This group of people had never thought that something like true fire body refinement could actually be completed by someone in such a short period of time as if it was cheating. Now they finally knew why Lin Shui could kill Butian when he was only at the real pellet state. Like Chen Qingdi, he was the kind of existence that couldn't be measured by realms. At the thought of this, everyone's expression became solemn. Previously, they thought that Lin Shui was only at the real pellet state, and he probably used some underhanded means to kill Butian. Obviously, the Blue Dragon Society had an existence that was more difficult to deal with than Butian. At this time in the field, Zhang Yunzi was a little stunned by Chu Xiu's sudden punch. He really didn't expect that the other party was also a character like Chen Qingdi. After reacting, Zhang Yunzi made a Taoist seal and wanted to fight back, but the next moment, Chu Xiu turned his fist into a claw, and the Black Tortoise True Technique's Oracle Dragon Claw was displayed. Amidst the roar of the dragon, the invincible Gang Qi Dragon Claw crushed Zhang Yunzi's Taoist seal in an instant, and then a palm fell. The Black Tortoise Divine Palm was so powerful that it directly blasted Zhang Yunzi away. This series of attacks directly stunned Zhang Yunzi. Every time he thought of an attack to deal with Chu Xiu would immediately change to another martial art, catching the opponent off guard. The seemingly different kinds of martial arts were perfectly coordinated in the hands of Chu Xiu, and it was simply too much for the eyes to take in. Lord Gaoping Lu Zhanlu on the side asked Helian Chongfeng, "Your White Tiger Hall has been dealing with the Blue Dragon Society for so long. Can you see the details of this Lin Shui?" Helian Chongfeng shook his head and said, "I can't see it. Real fire body refining was originally created by Chen Qingdi. Now that there is a second one, I don't understand it either. And I can be sure that his martial arts are definitely not the martial arts of the Blue Dragon Society, but the connection between several kinds of martial arts is extremely smooth, without any conflict, and the power is not inferior to some of the inherited martial arts of the Blue Dragon Society." Helian Chongfeng subconsciously touched his chest. The White Tiger Hall and the Blue Dragon Society had been enemies for generations, and he had even fought with Butian in the past. His understanding of the Blue Dragon Society was even deeper than some of his own people in the Blue Dragon Society. That was why he found it strange that someone who didn't have the martial arts heritage of the Azure Dragon Society, and who seemed to have popped out of a crack in a rock, became the head of the Azure Dragon Society. It was simply strange. Chapter 871. Throughout the history of Jianghu, there were very few techniques like the Black Tortoise True Technique, which included almost all types of martial arts. Moreover, even if there was such a technique, it would be extremely awkward for the practitioner to practice it. The reason why Chu Xiu could master the Black Tortoise True Technique so quickly was because he was a martial arts practitioner of this type. At least, Zhang Yunzi was extremely unaccustomed to this kind of fighting style. He was actually at a disadvantage at the beginning. Lu Chonglu sighed. He waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and the Taoist connotation was born. His Gang Qi circulated in midair. It looked like a gentle breeze, but it was as if a wall had been erected in front of Chu Xiu, blocking his attack. Although the three major Dao sects were not on the same side, at least Lu Chonglu could not watch Zhang Yunzi be defeated by Lin Shui in front of him and Lu's face. Big Dragon Head, Chunyang Dao sect always speaks like this. You don't have to worry about it. As long as you don't kill the Wang family today, everything will be fine. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "What if I insist on killing the Wang family?" Lu Chonglu sighed and said, "Then I can only follow Brother Zhang Yunzi and experience the martial arts of the Big Dragon Head. I am not afraid of being accused of bullying the few. Anyway, I am already so old, I don't care about my reputation." Lu Chonglu always liked to sigh. As he sighed, the wrinkles on his eyebrows deepened. There were too many helpless things in the world. If others did not stand up for him, how could he not stand up for them since he had promised the Wang family? One was the leader of the real martial arts sect, who was ranked in the top 10 on the Wind and Cloud list. The other was an elder of the Chunyang Dao sect who was in the true fire spirit refinement realm. The outcome of a one-on-one fight was unknown. 1 against 2. Chu Xiu had no confidence at all. However, at this moment, he took out the Zhou family's half of the map and looked at the crowd. He said coldly, "Everyone, don't think that you are all here to watch the show. I am a person who is very principled. If you don't provoke me, I won't provoke you." However, today, the Wang family attacked the people of the Blue Dragon Society, so they must give me an explanation. You guys go and stop Sect Master Lu. After I destroy the Wang family, we'll take the map and explore that place together. Otherwise, I will tear this map to shreds. Worst comes to worst, we will split up. You guys can take your time to search the whole of Eastern Qi. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed. It was a place where space was weak, not a building. Without a map, how were they going to find it?
LV Zhanlu said coldly. You dare? Holding the half of the map, Chu Xiu sneered and said, see if I dare or not.
Granny Hua Gui, I'm afraid you still don't know what's going on, right? Let me tell you, you'll be able to find the location of the final battle between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji with these two maps. Perhaps the inheritances left behind by these two supreme experts will be located there. Hearing this, Granny Flower Ghost's eyes lit up. She never thought that today's matter would involve so much. Actually, the reason why Granny Flower Ghost came to the Central Plains this time was just as she said. She was bored in the Great Western Desert, so she came here for a stroll. Unexpectedly, she sensed the presence of several true fire cultivators in the spirit refinement stage, so she came here to investigate. She didn't expect to reap such a great harvest. Granny Flower Ghost giggled. Stop calling me Madam Flower Ghost. With that, Granny Flower Ghost immediately stood in front of Lu Chonglu and said, Sect Master Lu, it's been a long time. It's been such a long time since we last met. I'd like to spar with Sect Master Lu and see if my strength has deteriorated. Just as she finished speaking, Granny Flower Ghost immediately started fighting with Lu Chonglu. The Rakshasa sect's martial arts were extremely evil. Although Granny Flower Ghost was mentally unstable, she was an old monster on the same level as the Ing family's patriarch. Although she wasn't in the heaven and earth mystic illumination, she had accumulated a lot of experience over the years. It wasn't a problem for her to hold Lu Chonglu back temporarily. On the other side, Chu Xiu stood in front of the enraged Zhang Yunzi. The heavenly law war case transformed into swords, spears, swords, and halberds. He smashed them all at Zhang Yunzi, forcing him to retreat step by step. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Han Lei, Song Xiao, and the others silently charged towards the Wang family. When had the Wang family's spell formation masters ever seen so much blood and slaughter? In addition, Chu Xiu had brought along the elites of the Blue Dragon Society. In the next moment, there were only two kinds of sounds in the battlefield. One was the sound of Chu Xiu and the others fighting, and the other was the miserable wails of the Wang family when Han Lei, Song Xiao, and the others were slaughtering the Wang family. Ying Zhao and the others had gloomy expressions on their faces. Although they didn't say anything, it meant that they tacitly agreed that the map was more important than the Wang family. However, seeing the Blue Dragon Society slaughter the Wang family in front of them, no one would be in a good mood. Ying Bailu, who was on the side, frowned. Obviously, he was not used to this kind of slaughter. Moreover, he had a feeling that this method was very familiar. LV Zhanlu said in a low voice, the Blue Dragon Society has produced someone who is even more difficult to deal with than Bu Tiannan. Helian Chongfeng frowned and nodded with a worried look on his face. In fact, the person that Helian Chongfeng was most afraid of was Bu Tiannan. Bu Tiannan's strength left a deep impression on him. Bu Tiannan was simply a madman. In today's situation, Bu Tiannan would also destroy the Wang family. Bu Tiannan would even kill anyone who tried to stop him. He would kill until no one dared to stop him. Although Lin Shui's goal was the same as Bu Tiannan's, his methods were completely different. Bu Tiannan only knew how to kill, but Lin Shui was very shameless. He even used the map to threaten them. He was simply harming others without benefiting himself. A simple-minded person like Bu Tiannan was actually very easy to deal with. However, a person like Lin Shui, who was unscrupulous, would be very difficult to deal with. In less than half an hour, the entire Wang family had been slaughtered. This made some of the people present see the methods of the Blue Dragon Society. It had to be said that in terms of killing people, there were very few people in Jianghu who could compare with the killers of the Blue Dragon Society. They were simply killing machines born to kill people. Ying Zhao coldly said, Lin Shui, have you killed enough? Chu Xiu stopped fighting with Zhang Yunzi and laughed. Ying family lord, don't speak in such a tone. Just now, none of you tried to stop him. If these people in front of him really wanted to save the Wang family, they would have already acted. However, they all remained silent and waited for Chu Xiu to finish killing people before jumping out to be the good guy. This was a bit fake. Ying Zhao snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. Chu Xiu also didn't continue to provoke them. He just took out the map and said, "Everyone, let's put this map together. Only we know about this matter. However, I hope that before we find that space, no one will leak this matter and attract others. Not only will we not have enough keys to distribute, but we won't even be able to obtain many inheritances." Everyone present nodded in agreement, including the fuming Zhang Yunzi. The clue about Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji was too tempting. If the news spread, the whole Jianghu would be stirred up. At present, there was not much difference in their strength, and they had enough keys. Except for some disputes caused by Chu Xiu's murder, they did not have to worry about anything else. Therefore, the number of people who knew about this was just right. After piecing the two pieces of the map together and memorizing the location, they immediately rushed in that direction. Han Lei, Song Xiao, and others were also sent back to the Blue Dragon Society by Chu Xiu. They had to keep their mouths shut about today's matter. The place marked on the map was in a barren mountain south of eastern Qi. The area was not too large, and the feng shui was not very good, so there were no martial arts forces stationed there. However, when they arrived at that place, Chu Xiu and others frowned. It was not because of anything else, but this place was too big. The maps drawn by the Wang family's ancestor and the Zhou family's ancestor were only accurate to the central area of this barren mountain. But how big was the entire central area? This thing was not a tangible thing that could be seen with the naked eye. Perhaps for array masters, they should have some way to determine the detailed location of the weak point of this space, but the people present did not. If there was really no way, then they could only use the simplest method, that was to take the key and try their luck one by one. Maybe they could break through the space. Anyway, the weakest among them was at the real pellet state, and their speed and physical strength were sufficient. Thinking so, everyone began to run back and forth in this place. Needless to say, this stupid method was quite effective. Ying Bailu's luck was the best. As he ran around with the key, his figure directly disappeared into a space. Seeing this scene, everyone immediately rushed towards that space and entered it one after another. When Chu Xiu stepped into this space, he suddenly felt a strong dizziness surrounding him. After all, this was not teleportation, but using a foreign object to forcibly break through the space. The experience was indeed a little bad. When the dizziness disappeared, Chu Xiu looked up and frowned. Everyone else had been teleported away randomly. At the place where Chu Xiu was, there was no vitality within a radius of a few miles. What came into view was a desert, and there was only a sandstorm as far as the eye could see. There was a scorching sun in the sky, and there was very little water vapor in the air. It was desolate everywhere. Let alone animals. There wasn't even a plant. What surprised Chu Xiu the most was that the aura of heaven and earth in this place was extremely thin. The stronger the martial artist, the more sensitive they were to the aura of heaven and earth because this was the power that belonged to heaven and earth. When a martial artist reached the real pellet state, he could communicate with heaven and earth with the martial Dao true pellet state. The most significant thing was that he could mobilize the power of heaven and earth to enhance his own strength, and he could quickly refine the aura of heaven and earth to transform it into his own true qi. But here, the aura of heaven and earth was so thin. A real pellet state martial artist would probably suck up all the aura of heaven and earth in the surrounding thousands of meters. It was simply a drop in the bucket. In this place, the martial artist of the real pellet state was really not much stronger than the martial artist of the unity of nature state. In Chu Xiu's view, this was simply a dead land without vitality. Chapter 872. In the endless desert, there seemed to be no end to it. Chu Xiu was the only one walking alone. Along the way, Chu Xiu did not discover any signs of human habitation. He did not even discover a trace of life. However, he did see some ruins along the way. Some very rough stone houses were half hidden in the yellow sand, and there were some corpses among them. There were buildings and corpses, which proved that this place had been inhabited before. However, there were no weapons on the corpses, and the bones had long been weathered. Therefore, Chu Xiu could not figure out whether these corpses were martial artists or not. This was a bit tricky. This place was so big, and there was not even a trace of human habitation. There was desert sand everywhere, and any traces would be covered by the yellow sand. Where could Chu Xiu find the traces left behind by Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji? At this moment, Chu Xiu suddenly felt a weak energy fluctuation in a direction, and it was not from the people he was familiar with. Chu Xiu immediately walked in that direction. A few miles away, two groups of people were fighting fiercely. These people were dressed almost like beggars. Some of them were not wearing clothes at all, but something made of plant fibers. There were about 30 people in the two groups, and one of them had fewer people, only about 10 people. It seemed that they had fallen into a disadvantage. Chu Xiu squinted at the two groups of people fighting fiercely. These people should be the natives of this world, but Chu Xiu could clearly sense that they were using martial Dao, and it was a martial Dao that had been developed to a very extreme degree. They had internal energy in their bodies, and Chu Xiu could even feel that a few of them had even condensed the martial Dao true core. However, their fighting style was extremely simple and unadorned. They brought out the power of their fists and kicks to the extreme, and their fighting style was like that of wild beasts. They were extremely ferocious and abandoned countless useless and fancy fighting techniques. Everything they did was to kill the enemy as their number one goal. It was not that they did not use their true chi, but only at a critical moment, when they had to use their killing moves or when their lives were in danger, would they use their inner true chi to resist. It was as if their own true chi was depleted every time they used it. In the outside world, which martial Dao grandmaster didn't release their gang energy and sword chi when they attacked. If they saw this group of people killing each other like wild beasts, they would definitely think that they were insulting the dignity of martial artists. Moreover, this group of people was also very interesting when they fought fiercely. None of them had much killing intent in their eyes, but when they attacked, it was as if they couldn't wait to cut each other into pieces. In battle, no matter how heavily injured someone was, they would not make a sound. On the contrary, they would fight with their lives on the line. Almost everyone had the courage to perish together with their opponent, as if they were all desperados. Chu Xiu observed carefully from the side. At that moment, however, someone from the side that had the upper hand suddenly sensed something, and he abruptly turned to look at Chu Xiu. There was yellow sand everywhere, and there was no place to hide. Chu Xiu could only restrain his aura to the extreme. However, the indigenous martial artists here seemed to have extremely keen sixth senses. Even in such a fierce battle, they quickly discovered Chu Xiu. The moment they saw Chu Xiu, the group of people spoke. Outsider. These people looked at Chu Xiu with shining eyes. There was no killing intent in their eyes, but excitement and greed. They looked at Chu Xiu as if they were looking at a piece of meat. The group of people immediately divided into half. Half of them were responsible for suppressing the other side, and the other half rushed madly toward Chu Xiu. With a slight frown, Chu Xiu unfolded the natural law war case in his hand and transformed it into the peerless heavenly saber. As the saber slashed down, a huge saber aura swept out. The warriors at the very front were immediately cut in half at the waist, and blood splattered everywhere. Chu Xiu frowned. The second time he used the blade, he only used the simplest blade technique to kill the enemy, instead of using the powerful blade aura. Because of the real chi consumed by the blade just now, Chu Xiu had not replenished it after absorbing the chi of heaven and earth for hundreds of meters around him. This was a barren land. If Chu Xiu continued to waste the chi of heaven and earth like the outside world, when his real chi was exhausted, there would be no place to replenish it. It was no wonder that this group of indigenous martial artists rarely used their genuine chi when they fought. Because in this illusion, their internal strength and genuine chi could only be used as a killing move. Once it was used up, it would take a long time to replenish it. Although these indigenous martial artists seemed to be fearless, Chu Xiu also discovered that they should be born with insufficient real chi. In this barren land, their real chi could never be replenished, and even their meridians were a little shriveled. Even if they condensed the true pellet state, they couldn't exert the effect of the true pellet state martial artist. The strength of the real pellet state martial artist was only a little stronger than the unity of man and nature state martial artist in the outside world. It was not a threat to Chu Xiu at all. The group of people who were fighting fiercely with another group of people finally showed a trace of fear in their eyes when they saw their own people were easily slashed by Chu Xiu. No one was not afraid of death. When facing a monster that they absolutely could not match, they would also be afraid. And when most people faced fear, they would generally make the same choice, that was, escape. But how would Chu Xiu give them a chance? With a wave of one hand, more than a dozen blood shadows flew out and wrapped around those people. In an instant, their blood was sucked dry, and they fell to the ground one after another. Demonic blood technique mainly relied on the power of chi and blood. It didn't consume too much internal chi and real chi, so it could be easily used here. Such an evil method made another group of indigenous martial artists also show surprise and fear in their hearts. Seeing Chu Xiu's gaze, one of the people in the group suddenly knelt down to Chu Xiu, crossed his hands on his shoulders, and said in a slightly clumsy voice, "Foreign powerhouse, we are willing to surrender to you. Let us go. I am the granddaughter of the city lord of Merchant City. If you take us back, you can exchange for a lot of things." Hearing this voice, Chu Xiu discovered that the leader of the group turned out to be a woman. Although she was dressed like the others, like a beggar, he could still see her beautiful face if he looked carefully. It was just that her chest was a little flat. The indigenous martial artists here seemed to be a little stunted. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Don't be in a hurry to surrender. Have you seen more than one outsider?" Seeing these people, Chu Xiu seemed to have a new clue. If these local indigenous martial artists had an inheritance, then when Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji fought 500 years ago, they should have also seen it. The woman lowered her head and said, "I haven't seen it, but every few years or decades, there will always be outsiders who stray into Green Capital." And then, the woman paused before saying, "They either die in the desert, or die in our hands." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. This woman was quite honest. "Wait, you said that this place is called Green Capital?" Chu Xiu looked at the yellow sand around him. "How could this place be called Green Capital?" The woman said, "I heard from my grandfather that when we came here 10,000 years ago, this place was like an otherworldly fairyland. Later on it became like this." Chu Xiu was shocked when he heard this. He thought that this group of people were the indigenous people of this space, but they actually came here 10,000 years ago. They were all survivors of the ancient catastrophe? "You came here 10,000 years ago? Do you know where you came from?" The woman shook her head and said, "I don't know, but my grandfather should know." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. If this group of people were really survivors of the ancient catastrophe, then maybe they would know the secrets of the ancient catastrophe. "By the way, what's your name?" "Shang-Chi." Chu Xiu glanced at the corpses around him and said, "Are these people your enemies? How many factions are there in this place?" Shang-Chi glanced at the corpses and said indifferently, "Other than the people from Merchant City, everyone else is our enemy. We found a broken branch of the Misty Pushun tree. They wanted to snatch it, but we didn't want to give it to them, so we started fighting. As for how many factions there are, I'm not sure either. Within the Green Capital, there are factions that fall apart at every moment, and there are also factions that reform. Although our Merchant City isn't the biggest faction, we are the most senior." "Misty Pushun tree? Natural treasures?" Shang-Chi waved her hand, and a skinny man ran to a rock that was half the height of a person. Soon, he dug out a thick branch. "This is the Misty Cattail tree. Although there's only one branch left, it can passively absorb weak yuan qi. Also, other than the outermost bark, the rest can be eaten. Such a large branch can feed more than 10 people for half a year." This time, Chu Xiu was really shocked. This thing did indeed contain weak heaven-earth yuan qi, but in the outside world, it couldn't even be considered a herb. It was no different from an ordinary tree. But here it was used as food to feed so many people, and even caused two groups of people to fight for it. The cruelty of this place was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. "Let's go. Bring me to your merchant city to take a look." Shang-Chi nodded, holding the Misty Pushun tree branch and said, "Then can you give this to us?" Chu Xiu nodded with a strange expression. What did he want this thing for? Shang-Chi and the rest were very obedient, leading the way for Chu Xiu. But at this time, Chu Xiu was slightly surprised and said, "Just now, you were fighting so hard against the enemies. Now that you've met me, why aren't you fighting so hard?" Shang-Chi said indifferently, "Because you're an outsider, you won't snatch our Misty Pushun tree, but they will. Furthermore, you're too strong. We're willing to fight with our lives, but we're not willing to throw away our lives. There are only so many resources in Green Capital. If we fight with our lives on the line, we'll weaken a bit of their strength, and the others in the merchant city will also have a chance to survive. But if we fight with our lives on the line, we won't get anything and will only die for nothing." Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. He seemed to have some understanding of the rules here. Chapter 873. The shopping center where Shang-Chi and the others were located was very far away from where they were. It took them half a day to reach it. Of course, this was also related to their speed. In such a place, no one dared to use their internal energy and vital qi on a large scale to hurry. They could only rely on their own strength to walk. Naturally, their speed was not fast. After half a day, a small city appeared in front of Chu Xiao. The small city could not even compare to a small county in the outside world. It was built with the simplest stones and looked simple and dilapidated. Only in front of the city gate were two big words written in ancient script: Shopping Center. Feeling the aura of the outside world, a group of cultivators rushed out of the shopping center. The leader was a skinny old man, but his eyes were full of ruthlessness. Among the people present, they were dressed in tatters like Shang-Chi and the others. Only this old man had a decent robe on him, but it was also full of holes. Who knew how long he had been wearing it for? At this moment, Shang-Chi suddenly shouted, "Grandpa! Kill him! This outsider is very strong. The things we get from killing him will be enough for our shopping center to survive the black storm this time." Hearing Shang-Chi say this, Chu Xiao was not surprised at all. In fact, he had already expected this. He had a rough idea of what the people in the Green Capital looked like from Shang-Chi's indirect questioning. These people lived in such a harsh environment. As long as they could survive, they would throw away the so-called moral bottom line. It was ridiculous to think that they could keep their word. This group of people would fight to the death for a dead branch. To them, the things on Chu Xiao's body were almost priceless treasures. This place was a weak point in the space. In the past, Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had broken the void in the battle, so they could enter this world. Chu Xiao and the others could also break the space and enter by relying on the array key. But over the years, there must have been people from the outside world who entered at specific times. They were the outsiders that Shang-Chi and the others had mentioned. As long as it was a martial artist that came in, besides weapons and cultivation methods, the only thing they would bring with them would be various cultivation pills and healing medicines. These things were priceless treasures to the natives of this place. In this barren world, not even ordinary plants could be found, let alone elixirs. However, Chu Xiao was really curious about this place. Moreover, only these natives could see Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji in the past. It was faster to ask them than to search the desert by himself. Therefore, even though Chu Xiao knew that there was a trap, he still followed them. Chu Xiao didn't panic at all. He just looked at Shang-Chi and said indifferently, "Do you know that you're in my hands now? You asked your grandfather to kill me. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you? The enmity between us doesn't seem to have reached the point where you have to drag me down with you, right?" Shang-Chi's expression didn't change as she said, "Under the black storm, I can also die. Even a large number of people in Merchant City will die. If I use my life to exchange for yours, the rest of the people in Merchant City won't have to die. It's worth it." Chu Xiao could see a trace of fear in Shang-Chi's eyes. It was just a very weak trace. Perhaps for the natives here, death was something they were used to. After saying that, Shang-Chi immediately shouted at the city lord of Merchant City, "Grandfather! What are you waiting for? Quickly kill him. Do you want to be like the last black storm, where the entire Merchant City was almost destroyed? Father died, and in the end, no one was saved. If I die today, I can exchange the lives of the people in Merchant City." A faint smile appeared on Chu Xiao's face. He waved his hand, and a bloody shadow holding a sword appeared beside Shang-Chi. The sword condensed from blood was placed on her neck. Seeing this scene, although the expression of the city lord of Merchant City was still fierce, he revealed a look of pity and heartache. Obviously, he had a lot of feelings for his granddaughter. Looking at the city lord of Merchant City, Chu Xiao said lightly, "You feel sorry for your granddaughter? Think about it. Once you make a move, she will die." "Grandfather!" Shang-Chi shouted again. Her voice was hoarse as if she had used up all her strength. Chu Xiao touched his nose. It seemed like he was the victim who had been deceived, but why did this scene seem like he was the villain who used the life of someone else to threaten them? The city lord of Merchant City gritted his teeth, as if he had made a decision. His figure moved, and the yellow sand under his feet exploded. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Chu Xiao and directly punched. True fire burned around Chu Xiao's body as he displayed the mountain and sea fist scripture. The power of his punch could shake mountains and break seas. At least on the surface, it was stronger than the city lord of Merchant City. When the two fists collided, a powerful force erupted. The yellow sand under their feet instantly exploded like a sandstorm, making it difficult for the outside world to see clearly. After just one move, Chu Xiu's expression suddenly changed. He subconsciously spat out a word, F***CK. Previously, the aura around the city lord of Merchant City was restrained, so Chu Xiu did not notice it. But now that he had made a move, Chu Xiu could sense that the other party was actually a powerhouse at the Heaven and Earth mystic realm. Originally, although Chu Xiu knew that this Shang-Chi was lying to him, he also wanted to completely suppress this indigenous small city, then ask them if they knew the whereabouts of Duge Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, and about the ancient Great Calamity. In the end, the idea was right, but who would have thought that among these indigenous martial artists who were about to starve to death, there would actually be a Heaven and Earth mysterious realm powerhouse? A dilapidated small city could actually raise a giant dragon. However, after one move, Chu Xiu was blasted away, and the city lord of Merchant City also took a step back. Chu Xiu suddenly realized that the Heaven and Earth mystic realm here was not the outside world. He was purely scaring himself just now. The other party was indeed a martial artist at the Heaven and Earth mystic realm, but what was the most important thing about the existence of the Heaven and Earth mystic realm? Sensing this world with martial arts, he could attract the power of Heaven and Earth for his own use. It was not like the real pellet state and the real fire god refinement state, where he just borrowed a trace of the power of Heaven and Earth, but he could completely control it. Human strength was limited, but the power of Heaven and Earth was infinite. Therefore, for a powerhouse at the Heaven and Earth mystic realm like Yi Xiaonan, it was just a piece of cake for him to shatter mountains and seas. But the question was, what did this world look like? This was a dead world. It was a dead land with extremely thin aura of Heaven and Earth. What kind of power could you attract in such a place? At most, it was just a small sandstorm. Therefore, when the city lord of Merchant City fought with Chu Xiu just now, he used his own power completely. He couldn't exert the greatest advantage of the Heaven and Earth mystic realm at all. At the same time, the eyes of the city lord of Merchant City looking at Chu Xiu were also a little surprised. For so many years, there had always been outsiders entering Green City, but most of them were not very strong. They either starved to death in the desert outside or were killed by the local aborigines. Just now, Shang-Chi said that Chu Xiu was very strong, and the city lord of Merchant City didn't care. He was even thinking of finding a chance to kill Chu Xiu and rescue his granddaughter. As a result, he didn't expect that this person's strength was actually strong to such a degree. He was obviously at the real pellet state, but he had such a powerful physical strength. Could it be that the martial arts of the outside world had developed to such a level? Are the real pellet state martial artists so powerful? The city lord of Merchant City didn't think much. His figure once again rushed toward Chu Xiu. Because he couldn't attract the power of Heaven and Earth, the martial arts of the city lord of Merchant City was very simple, but it was also very strange. He didn't have any powerful martial skills, but he used his own body as a weapon. This punch was like a hot knife through butter, its sharpness seeming to pierce through the void. In front of Chu Xiu's eyes, the city lord of Merchant City seemed to have disappeared, replaced by a sharp spear that wanted to pierce through the heavens and earth. The heavenly law war case in Chu Xiu's hand shook, and it transformed into the Heaven-Seek Tyrant spear. It was as sharp as the spear. In an instant, the mechanical components on the heavenly law war case even cracked slightly, and Chu Xiu took several steps back. Even if the existence of the Heaven and Earth mystic state couldn't use their internal strength and true qi, and they couldn't draw the power of Heaven and Earth, their own physical strength was shocking enough. Seeing the city lord of Merchant City raised his palm as a blade, slashing at Chu Xiu as if he was going to split the world, this time, Chu Xiu couldn't care less about the consumption of his own internal strength. The natural war case turned into the peerless heavenly blade. As this blade slashed down, the entire space was fixed on the spot like a picture scroll. The storm stopped, and even the yellow sand was stagnant in the air. The misty red dust slashed down, and the power made the city lord of Merchant City's expression change suddenly. He let out a furious roar like a mad lion. His eyes were scarlet red, and a series of sonic booms rang out. Everything around him was turned into dust. This was the first time the city lord of Merchant City used his internal strength and true qi to display a martial arts technique. It was similar to the 9 transformation lion roar of the Great Light Temple, and it directly shattered the space imprisonment of Chu Xiu's misty red dust. However, at this time, Chu Xiu's blade also neared, and it directly collided with the city lord's hand blade. The next moment,
An overwhelming blade light flashed, and the city lord of Merchant City was blasted more than 10 feet away.
Chu Xiao took 3 steps back, and this was the first time he had a slight upper hand.
Shang-Chi, who was watching the battle from the side, had a look of disbelief and shock in her eyes, and there was even a hint of regret.
She had lured Chu Xiao here, and she had already planned to perish together with him. However, the things on Chu Xiao's body would also be obtained by Merchant City, and they would be able to survive this black storm. However, she didn't expect that this outsider's strength would be so strong. Her grandfather had even used the internal strength and true qi that he had accumulated for a long time, but he still couldn't take down the opponent, and was even at a disadvantage now.
Could it be that what she had lured this time was not the hope of Merchant City, but a disaster?
Chapter 874. The city lord of Merchant City looked at Chu Xiao in front of him with a solemn expression. Although he was born in Green Capital, the martial arts he inherited were the martial arts of the human race from 10,000 years ago. Apart from paying more attention to the physical body to adapt to this environment with thin vitality, it could be said that it was of the same origin. However, the saber strike from the outsider in front of him was simply amazing. It had even forced him to use the little internal force in his body to resist it. Just as the city lord of Merchant City wanted to continue attacking, Chu Xiao suddenly stretched out his hand and said, "Wait, don't you realize that there is no point in us fighting now? You can't kill me, and I can't kill you. If we continue to fight, both of us will suffer. I don't want to die, and you are the city lord of this city. If something happens to you, how will you resist the other forces around Green Capital? Also, the black storm that you mentioned needs to be resisted by you, the city lord. In that case, why don't we make a deal? I know what you want. Isn't it medicinal pills? I have plenty of them here." As he spoke, Chu Xiao directly took out a large number of medicinal pills from the secret space box, piling them up to the height of a person. These medicinal pill bottles had 3 big words written on them. Blood recovery pill. These medicinal pills were the blood recovery pills refined by the Zhanwu Hall in the past. Because the level of the Zhanwu Hall's alchemists was limited at that time, they could only refine these things. Chu Xiao conveniently took some and treated it as promoting his own products. Later, when his physical body was destroyed, the secret space box also entered the blood soul bead because it contained space inside. Although it was a little damaged, it did not affect its storage function. Therefore, Chu Xiao did not replace it. He did not expect that it would come in handy today. Chu Xiao opened a bottle of pills. Although the medicinal fragrance was not very strong, it was extremely obvious in such a barren place. It caused every cultivator in Merchant City to stare at it with wide eyes. Their eyes were frighteningly red. For these people in Merchant City, anything that contained a trace of power was the key to their survival. Medicinal pills were refined from the essence of heaven and earth. A bottle of low-level medicinal pills might be digested in the outside world in an hour. Some martial artists from large sects ate them like chewing candy. But for the martial artists in Merchant City, a bottle of medicinal pills could even let them live for a year if it was just to maintain their vitality. Once again, he waved his hand and the medicinal pills disappeared into the secret space box. Chu Xiao said lightly, "Now, can we sit down and talk calmly?" The city lord of Merchant City let out a long breath and said in a deep voice, "Let go of my granddaughter first." Chu Xiao waved his hand, and the blood shadow dissipated. He threw 10 bottles of blood recovery pills to Shang-Chi and said, "A greeting gift. I am a broad-minded person, and I repay evil with good, so I won't hold it against you for lying to me just now." Shang-Chi glanced at Chu Xiao and immediately ran to Merchant City's city lord's side. However, she did not keep the 10 bottles of medicinal pills. Instead, she handed them to a martial artist who was not young and said softly, "Give the medicinal pills to the people who were injured last time. Let them use them first." Chu Xiao glanced at Shang-Chi in surprise. At this time, the city lord of Merchant City let out a long breath and said, "Please come in." A faint smile appeared on Chu Xiao's face. It seemed that no matter where it was, strength was the most important. The rules here were the same. Today, if Chu Xiao did not show his strength, he would have been killed and robbed like those outsiders. He would not have been invited into the city. Chu Xiao calmly walked into the shopping center and looked around at the same time. This merchant city was called a city, but in fact, it was extremely desolate. There were only some simple houses built with stone in the entire city. That's right, all of them were made of stone. Compared to the outside world, the only difference here was that there was no annoying yellow sand. The city lord's residence was the same. The only difference was that it was slightly bigger than the stone houses in the outside world.
Sitting on a stone table with Chu Xiao, the city lord of Merchant City said in a deep voice. Now you can say it.
What do you want to trade? As you can see, I don't have anything here. There are only some ancient martial arts passed down. However, your martial arts inheritance is even stronger than mine. It is useless for you to take it. Chu Xiao said, Don't worry, what I want to trade is not too difficult. It is just some information.
By the way, I have not asked for the city lord's name.
The city lord of Merchant City said expressionlessly, I am Shang Tianliang. However, there are very few people who call me this name. In this merchant city, Shang Tianliang's seniority was the highest. Naturally, no one would call him by his name. Chu Xiao's expression was slightly strange. Shang Tianliang, breaking his conscience? Coughing, Chu Xiao said, I am very curious about this green city. I heard from Shang-Chi that you came here after the ancient calamity 10,000 years ago? What was the situation then? What was the ancient calamity?
Shang Tianliang laughed coldly and pointed at himself.
Wrong. I should say that we came here before the ancient calamity. We are just the descendants of a group of refugees.
Shang Tianliang pointed at himself and the outside at the same time.
Before the ancient calamity began, those top forces already had a way to avoid it. However, our ancestors did not. We were just a group of refugees who were unwilling to be abandoned. We tried our best to find a way to survive. This space was discovered at that time. Our ancestors worked together to blast open a door at the weakest point of the space. Then, dozens of forces, maybe even hundreds of forces, moved here. At that time, they called this place Green City. It was like spring all year round. The heaven-earth Yuan Qi was extremely rich. It was a good place to live in seclusion. However, the funny thing is that our ancestors neglected one point. If this place was really a paradise, why would those big sects give up on this place? This place could not be considered a world. It could only be considered a relatively large independent space. Everything inside was extremely unstable. About 3,000 years ago, the heaven-earth Yuan Qi disappeared. In the end, even the environment became extremely barren. There has not been a single drop of rain here for decades. You can see the situation now. Survival has become a problem.
The forces and families that came in back then have all been broken up.
They have formed a group to survive. Merchant City is such a case. If I had known this would happen, my ancestors might as well have stayed there and resisted.
Through you later generations, I also know that under the Great Calamity, not all lives were destroyed. After 10,000 years, I have been struggling at death's door, while those who resisted the Great Calamity outside, they have once again flourished in martial arts.
After listening to Shang Tianliang, Chu Xiao felt that their ancestors were just unlucky. Except for those who were truly desperate, no one was willing to sit and wait for death.
In the end, fate made a fool of people.
Those who really sat and waited for death survived. Meanwhile, the descendants of those who dared to fight for opportunities were waiting for death here. By the way, what is going on with the great ancient calamity? Where did those people in ancient times go? Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, I don't know. You don't know?
I just don't know.
Don't imagine our ancestors to be too strong. In ancient times, they were not even the top first-rate forces. They were only second- or third-rate forces. The great ancient calamity has long been predicted by some divination grandmasters. Moreover, in the later period, the earth dragon turned over, meteorites fell from the sky, heavenly fire and earthly fire erupted at the same time, and all kinds of natural disasters occurred continuously. It was as if the world was going to be destroyed. These scenes proved that the divination grandmasters were right.
However, the real reason might be that no one knows what happened except for those who stood at the peak of martial arts at that time. In the records of my ancestors, those top sects seem to have a plan to take away some of their disciples, or even not all of them.
Even those top sects couldn't take away all of their disciples, let alone us. Chu Xiao rubbed his head. It seemed like the great ancient calamity was not that simple. Instead, he had thought of things too simply. If the reason for the great ancient calamity was really known to everyone,
Then it would not be a mystery anymore.
Those who survived the great ancient calamity should know about it. At that moment, Shang-Chi walked in with a tea tray made of stone. There were 2 cups of murky water and a few grayish-white things. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. Could this thing be drunk? Shang-Chi seemed to know what Chu Xiu was thinking. She snorted and said, "In Green City, having water means life. Shang City is rooted here because there is a cave 100 feet underground. They can receive some water from there every day. Also, these pastries are made from the puyu tree." Chu Xiu took a piece and stuffed it into his mouth, frowning slightly. The taste was like chewing wax. It made him feel like he was chewing white ash. Shang-Chi said lightly, "It's not delicious, but if you eat it, you can survive." Chu Xiu knocked on the stone table and said, "Is the situation in this place already so bad? For such a thing, we have to fight each other desperately.
The number of people who die for it is probably more than the number of people it can save."
Shang-Chi lowered her head and didn't say anything. Shang Tianliang paused and said, "But if we don't fight desperately, everyone will starve to death. You come from the outside world, so it should be hard to imagine what it looks like when a real pellet state martial artist starves to death, right? This is the rule of Green City. For everything that can save one's life, one can fight for it with one's life.
Even when food is the most scarce, 2 neighboring forces will fight even if there is no conflict and there is no benefit.
Because after a fight, those who survive are all powerhouses. Similarly, a group of people die, the pressure of food resources is reduced, and the remaining people can continue to live." Chu Xiu shuddered when he heard this. Lu Jianghe, who was in the blood soul bead, felt the same way. Whether it was Chu Xiu or Lu Jianghe, they had a lot of blood and lives on their hands. But everyone they killed had a reason. For fame, for profit, for hatred, these were all acceptable. But here, there was no hatred. In order to survive, they had to kill. This place was simply hell on earth. Chapter 875. The cruelty in Green Capital was beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. After a moment of silence, Chu Xiu suddenly asked, "Then when you were short of resources, did you eat people?" Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi were both silent. Finally, Shang Tianliang said in a deep voice, "With I in charge of Merchant City, even if we went out to snatch resources, we would not do something like eating people. This old master's ancestors were the family that guarded the sky-piercing peak for High Heaven Sect for tens of thousands of years. Even if High Heaven Sect didn't take our ancestors away in the end, my Shang clan's ancestors still had a clear conscience. Similarly, treating humans as food was the behavior of wild beasts. This was the bottom line of humanity. Even if the entire merchant city starves to death, I will not tolerate such a situation." But after saying this, Shang Tianliang's voice suddenly became lower. "Although such a thing has not happened in Merchant City, it has happened in other gathering places. But this may be heaven's punishment. Even if they chose to eat people, they still could not survive. The entire gathering place was buried in the black storm." "By the way, the black storm you mentioned before, what is it? I feel like you are very afraid of it." Shang Tianliang sighed. "The black storm is a kind of sandstorm in the desert, but it is the strongest kind. It can crush everything. It is a disaster that is close to the power of destruction. The black storm does not come at a fixed time, but every few years, it will come once. It can last for a few months, or as short as 10 days. It all depends on luck. Every time the dark storm appeared, even I couldn't stay outside for a long period of time. I could only hide in a hole that I had dug. But if there is no accumulation of resources, and the black storm happens to come for a long time, there is a risk of starving to death." At this moment, Shang-Chi suddenly said to Chu Xiu, "I lied to you before, but I don't think I did anything wrong. The medicinal pills that an outsider has on him are enough to allow our merchant city to survive this black storm. My father died in the last black storm while trying to save the people in the city, but in the end, he did not even save a single person and even lost his own life." Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "I'm a broad-minded person, I won't take such a small matter to heart. I have a lot of medicinal pills here. As long as you can give me a satisfactory answer, and also help me out a bit, these medicinal pills are all yours. According to what you said, Green Metropolis is not a complete world. It's just a space, so it shouldn't be too big. Do you know all the outsiders?" "More or less," Shang Tianliang said. "Even if we don't know,
There will be news if the people from the other colonies run into outsiders. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice. Then do you know that about 500 years ago, two very, very powerful outsiders came here? So strong that they can use their strength to shatter the void and come here? Shang Tianliang's expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, I know, of course I know. Everyone in Green City knows. 500 years ago, Lu Du encountered its strongest black storm. At that time, almost everyone was prepared to die. However, at that time, two experts descended from the sky and began to fight fiercely. The place where they fought was the center of the black storm. In the end, those two people forcibly shattered the black storm, so to be precise, they saved many lives at that time. Hearing this news, Chu Xiu's eyes lit up. Then do you know what happened to them in the end? I don't know. Shang Tianliang shook his head and said, the power caused by those two experts was too strong. Not only did they completely shatter the black storm, but even the area where they fought caused the space to shatter. It's very dangerous. It's been so long. No one wants to go over and take a look? Shang Tianliang said, in this kind of damned place, nothing is more important than staying alive. For people like us, just staying alive is already doing our best. Why would we have the curiosity to explore such a dangerous place? Moreover, what's the use even if we get the secret technique? If we can't get out of this place, it's useless even if we have a high cultivation base. According to the family's records, my current realm is not inferior to that of my ancestors, but in a place like this, it's still precarious. With a wave of his hand, Chu Xiu took out half of the blood recovery pills and said, this is the deposit. Take me to that place and help me kill someone. I'll give you the rest after it's done. Without hesitation, Shang Tianliang immediately said, deal. That place was indeed dangerous, but with so many pills, it was enough to ensure that the entire merchant city would be safe for 100 years. It was a good deal. As for who Chu Xiu wanted to kill, it had nothing to do with him. In a place like Green City, was it rare to kill someone? After receiving the information, Chu Xiu immediately asked Shang Tianliang to lead the way to the place where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had fought. Chu Xiu was not an idiot, and neither were the others. If he could think of asking the natives in this space for information, the others could naturally do the same. Therefore, there was no time to lose. It would not be good if someone took the initiative. As for the person Chu Xiu wanted to kill, it was naturally Zhang Yunzi. It was actually quite difficult to kill Zhang Yunzi in a one-on-one fight. Last time, Chu Xiu was able to kill Butiannan because Duanmu Qianshan harassed him from the side and the environment. The formation sealed off the Blue Dragon Society. In addition, Butiannan was extremely stubborn and did not think of escaping after the battle. Now, if Chu Xiu wanted to kill Zhang Yunzi, even if he had the strength, Zhang Yunzi could still escape. There was no need to guard there. However, with Shang Tianliang's help, their chances of success would be much greater. It would be even better if they ran into Zhang Yunzi, who was alone. Chu Xiu wouldn't even have to reveal his identity, and he would be able to kill him without anyone noticing. This was a space that existed alone and was full of danger. Wasn't it normal for someone to die? The mall was considered a relatively large gathering place in Green City. Shang Tianliang brought Chu Xiu there. He did not bring too many people with him. The others stayed in the mall to guard it. He only brought his granddaughter, Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi was not strong. According to the power system of the outside world, she was almost at the unity of heaven and man realm. However, here, her strength was only equivalent to the three-flower realm in the outside world. Chu Xiu was a little puzzled that she wanted to tag along. However, Shang Tianliang explained that when Shang-Chi's father was still alive, he often took her to the outside world to broaden her horizons and train her ability to survive. One time, they accidentally ran to the place where Dugu Weiwa and Ning Xuanji were fighting. In the end, they also successfully came out. Therefore, Shang-Chi was actually more familiar with that place than Shang Tianliang. Because this space was not complete, Chu Xiu had a very poor sense of direction in this place. There was no point of reference around, so he basically could not tell north from south. Shang Tianliang and Shang-Chi took Chu Xiu in one direction for a full 5 days before they arrived at the place. It was only when they arrived that they understood why Shang Tianliang said this place was dangerous. It was a huge area that had been torn apart. Everything around it was misty, and one could vaguely see the wounds formed by the torn space.
A violent aura emerged here. Earth fire rose, and the wind howled. It was like hell.
Shang Tianliang pointed to the place and said, "This is it.
This place is very dangerous. The torn space can move. Those who are weak or accidentally touch these moving spaces will be easily torn apart." Chu Xiu nodded and followed Shang Tianliang into the space. He had also raised his mental strength to the extreme, constantly paying attention to the movements around him. It was the same for Shang Tianliang. Moreover, he had to take care of his granddaughter. Although Shang-Chi was also very vigilant, she was afraid that he would not be able to keep up. The moment they stepped into the area, Chu Xiu immediately felt a wave of energy attacking him. To be precise, it should be the residual energy left behind by the battle between Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji. This energy was very familiar to Chu Xiu. Although it seemed very violent to outsiders, it was compatible with Chu Xiu's power. When he fought with Shang Tianliang previously, Chu Xiu had consumed a lot of inner energy and vital energy. Because the world's essence qi here was thin, the energy he had consumed was not replenished. But here, the energy involuntarily surged into his body, restoring the inner energy he had consumed before. At this moment, Chu Xiu could finally confirm that this was indeed the place where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji had fought in the past. Lu Jianghe, who was in the Blood Soul Pearl, also said, "This is indeed the energy left behind by the sect master. This SK, that old Taoist Ning Xuanji is actually so powerful. Did the sect master really perish together with him?" "You know Ning Xuanji?" Chu Xiu asked casually.
Lu Jianghe said, "Of course I know him. Don't forget that I used to be the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall, second only to the 4 great demon sovereigns. Who doesn't know the powerhouses of that era?"
Chu Xiu had only asked casually.
He had thought that an immortal-like figure like Ning Xuanji must have the image of an expert who had not appeared in the world for a long time. He did not expect that Lu Jianghe would know him.
What kind of person was Ning Xuanji? Chu Xiu was very curious about this. After all, the end of the Kunlun devil cult could be said to have been caused by Ning Xuanji. However, apart from the true martial sect, most of Ning Xuanji's deeds were in legends. They were a little too high profile and sounded a little fake. Lu Jianghe paused and said in a somewhat embarrassed tone, "Apart from being powerful, that old Taoist is simply a different person from the legendary Ning Xuanji. Back then when I was in his hands, that old Taoist beat me up for 3 days and 3 nights. I couldn't even self-destruct and reconstruct my body. Even my primordial spirit was sealed by him. That old Taoist even asked me to steal a dog and roast it for him. I am the Hall Master of the Blood Demon Hall. Yet I stole someone else's dog. Moreover, I had to steal it secretly. I couldn't even snatch it by force." At this point, Lu Jianghe broke down a little. Obviously, he felt that he could not bear to recall the past. Chapter 876. What Lu Jianghe said was definitely a secret in the pugilistic world. Apart from true martial sects Lu Chonglu and the other higher-ups, he should be the only one in the pugilistic world who knew about it. Of course, the old Celestial Master might also know about it. Although the old Celestial Master was still young at that time, Ning Xuanji was not as mythologized as he was now. In any case, Chu Xiu was dumbfounded. He was stunned for a moment before asking, "How did you survive in the end?" Lu Jianghe was a little depressed as he said, "At that time, the Kunlun devil cult had not expanded to the point where we were the public enemy of the pugilistic world. The true martial sect had not fallen out with the Kunlun devil cult either. No matter what, I was still a higher-up of the Kunlun devil cult. That old Taoist Ning Xuanji would not dare to kill me just like that." "So, he was the one who let you go in the end?" Lu Jianghe said in a muffled voice. "No, I was redeemed by the Red Lotus Demon Venerable." Hearing this, Chu Xiu resisted the urge to laugh at Lu Jianghe. It seemed that this was not the only stupid thing he had done back then. At that moment, Shang Tianliang suddenly sighed and said, "What were the cultivation levels of the 2 powerhouses who fought back then?" "They were comparable to the Tao Lords of the 3 Pristine Temple, and the sect master of the High Heaven sect in the ancient times." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "One of them was the public enemy of the pugilistic world. He almost dominated the entire pugilistic world with his own strength.
He was only one step away from being the most powerful person in the world. The other one ended his existence as the most powerful person in the world.
Shang Tianliang was stunned.
He could not imagine what kind of person could dominate the entire pugilistic world with his own strength. All his inheritance came from the records of his ancestors. Therefore, Shang Tianliang's memories of the outside world were still preserved in the ancient times. In any case, he could not imagine that someone could be so powerful in the ancient times. In that era there were many powerhouses. If someone wanted to dominate the pugilistic world, he would be attacked by everyone. At that moment, a few figures suddenly appeared in front of Chu Xiao. The heavenly law war case appeared and instantly transformed into the Heaven Quest Tyrant's spear in his hand. In front of Chu Xiao were Lu Zhanlu of Eastern Qi, Helian Changfeng of White Tiger Hall, and Ying Bailu and his son. There were also a few people from the local native forces around them. It was obvious that Chu Xiao was not the only smart one. However, the people around them seemed to be very weak. The strongest one was only at the real pellet state. Of course, it was difficult to even exert the power of the unity of man and nature state here. When the indigenous warriors saw Shang Tianliang behind Chu Xiao, their expressions changed slightly. They didn't expect that an expert like City Lord Shang would be captured by these outsiders. The routine of Lu Zhanlu and others was different from that of Chu Xiao. They just grabbed a random person to be their guide, unlike Chu Xiao, who went straight to their hometown. At this time, Shang Tianliang's aura was hidden to the extreme. They didn't even realize that this person was actually at the heaven and earth mystic connection state. They thought that Chu Xiao was the same as them, who just grabbed a local native to lead the way. After seeing that the person was Chu Xiao, everyone let down their vigilance a little. They were all outsiders. Before seeing the treasure, no one would be short-sighted to fight in such a place.
What did you find in the big dragon head? Ying Zhao asked first. Chu Xiao shook his head and said, I've only just arrived. From the looks of it, you guys should have arrived earlier than me? Ying Zhao said with a bitter smile, It's useless to be early. The space in this place is torn. We can't find the way or any direction. We have been wandering around here for several days. Except for this dilapidated place, we found nothing. At this time, Shang-Chi behind Chu Xiao said, The space in this place has been distorted. If you walk normally, you will get lost here. When my father and I came last time, we randomly reversed our position and accidentally came to the central area, but we didn't dare to continue inside. We followed the same reverse position and walked out. Helian Chongfeng's eyes suddenly lit up. He took a step forward and stared at Shang-Chi. Little girl, do you know the way to the central area? Don't talk nonsense. The White Tiger Hall mainly cultivated Yu Jin's murderous intent. The White Tiger Fiend Godly Shield had condensed the Blood Fiend Shield to the extreme. At this moment, even if the killing intent Helian Chongfeng released unintentionally, it still pierced Shang-Chi's body and made her tremble. When he saw this scene, a trace of anger immediately appeared in Shang Tianliang's eyes. However, before he could say anything, Chu Xiao took a step forward and stood in front of Shang-Chi. He said indifferently, Hallmaster Helian, don't frighten the little girl with that strong killing intent of yours. She is someone I brought here. If she says she knows, then she definitely knows. If you have doubts, you can choose not to go. No one is forcing you to go. A trace of coldness flashed in Helian Chongfeng's eyes.
However, he forcibly restrained himself and didn't flare up.
The White Tiger Hall and the Blue Dragon Society had been enemies for generations. No matter who was the big dragon head, Helian Chongfeng didn't see eye to eye with them. However, he still couldn't see through this newly appointed big dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society. Moreover, it wasn't appropriate to make a move in this kind of place. Thus, Helian Chongfeng forcibly restrained his violent temper and endured it. Chu Xiao let Shang-Chi lead the way while he followed behind. When the others saw this scene, they had no other choice but to follow behind Chu Xiao and see if they could really find the place. Shang-Chi really did know the central area of this place. After all, she had been here once. The people of Green City were very sensitive to any dangerous places. Because they were afraid of falling into the same kind of danger again, they had a very deep memory of the road in this place. After turning left and right, they actually really did arrive at the central area. However, when they arrived at the loyal area, there was a wave of fighting in front of them. Everyone looked at each other and immediately moved forward. The people who were fighting at the front were actually Granny Flower Ghost, Lu Chonglu, and Zhang Yunzi.
Granny Flower Ghost resisted the two of them with great difficulty while scolding. "What do you two old things mean?
If it wasn't for me, would you two old fools who don't know how to be flexible be able to find this place? I just wanted these natives to explore the way, and you guys went crazy. Do you really think you're saints?"
Everyone looked over and saw that there were indeed a few corpses at their side.
Everyone's expression was a little strange. From what Granny Flower Ghost said, she should have forced the natives to lead the way, and Lu Chonglu and Zhang Yunzi were obviously unwilling to do so, so they followed her. This kind of thing seemed like something they would do. After all, these two were from the most orthodox sections. It could be said that they were the most orthodox sections. It was normal for them to be unwilling to do such things that went against their conscience. However, if the two of them fell out with each other just because Granny Flower Ghost used these people's lives to explore the way, that would be too exaggerated. Although these two were from the orthodox sects, they were not really people who could not bear to rub sand in their eyes. Otherwise, Zhang Yunzi and Lu Chonglu would have fought with Chu Xiu to the death after Chu Xiu massacred the entire Wang family. "You used the inner alchemy sect's evil technique to pluck Yang Qi in front of us and humiliated our Dao sect. Do you think we're all blind?" Zhang Yunzi gritted his teeth and said. Granny Flower Ghost said crazily, "The qi of heaven and earth in this damn place is so thin that there's only one layer left. If I don't pluck them, how am I going to replenish my strength?" "You're still fighting? If you continue fighting, no one will be able to have fun." Upon hearing this, the crowd immediately understood what was going on. They looked at the Flower Ghost Granny with a strange look in their eyes. This person was truly a little expert at courting death. The inner alchemy sect used to be a branch of the Dao sect, but it was regarded as the shame of the Dao sect. It was even a taboo of the Dao sect. The inner alchemy sect sounded like a very normal sect, but in fact, it cultivated by plucking the yin and yang qi of men and women. In the end, they could even combine yin and yang to create a fake true martial core in the body. Although it was incomparable to a normal true martial core, in the inner alchemy sect, it was said that anyone could become a martial Dao grandmaster. The ones who destroyed the inner alchemy sect back then were none other than the Dao sect itself. Because this sect had brought too much dishonor to the Dao sect, they were ruthlessly eliminated by them. No one knew where Granny Flower Ghost got the secret technique of the inner alchemy sect from. It was fine if she used it normally, but she actually dared to use it in front of the two Dao sect perfected persons. She was simply courting death. Of course, this was not the first time Granny Flower Ghost had done such a thing. Previously, she had lured young cultivators to pluck their yin for cultivation in the Central Plains. It would have been fine if she had only done it to ordinary people, but she actually dared to do it to the disciples of the major sections. In the end, she had incurred the wrath of the public and even involved the Rakshasa sect. Seeing that the two old Taoists were merciless, Granny Flower Ghost quickly shouted at Chu Xiu and the rest, "Don't just stand there and watch. Help me stop those two old guys. I just used my mental strength to contact the people who were scouting ahead. There's something good inside." Upon hearing this, LV Zhanlu coughed and said, "The two of you, the clue about Senior Ning Xuanji is just ahead. You've wasted so much effort here. It'll be very disadvantageous for you later." Upon hearing this, Lu Chonglu and Zhang Yunzi finally stopped. However, they both snorted coldly and looked at Granny Flower Ghost with hostility. Lu Chonglu was considered to have a good temper. When they were outside, Chu Xiu did not give him any face at all. Even when he massacred the Wang clan on the spot, Lu Chonglu did not have such an expression. One could imagine how angry Granny Flower Ghost was right now. "Granny Flower Ghost, what exactly is ahead?" Ying Zhao asked. At the very front was a foggy area. The last time Shang-Chi and her father came here, they turned back. She had never entered the core area before. After being targeted by two cultivators in the true fire spirit refinement stage, Granny Flower Ghost did not dare to speak nonsense. She did not keep them in suspense and said directly, "I connected my mental strength to the native who was scouting ahead. However, it only lasted for a very short time before the mental connection was completely severed. However, before the mental connection was severed, I saw two figures. They looked like Ning Xuanji and Patriarch Dugu." Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked. 500 years had passed. Could it be that Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji were really not dead? You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.